Hunter Biden has been indicted federally. Wow. It's not the first time, I guess. There's that other plea agreement that he's currently working on, but more charges related to guns. And interesting, to say the least, considering the investigations, the impeachment inquiry into his dad, and what this will end up meaning for the 2024 election. Because all this stuff happening to Hunter does leak out into the Biden family and the Biden administration, and it is all connected. There's a tweet from Michael Tracy saying, you know what, are they really going to impeach Joe Biden for what he did a decade ago? And Rep. Gosar said, no, what we're seeing with Ukraine and with the war is the ongoing bribery, or is connected to it. So this is pretty interesting. We got other really big news. Kevin McCarthy rips a reporter to shreds, and it's masterfully done. And I'm not even the biggest fan of Kevin McCarthy, but the reporter is implying there's no evidence, and he just outright starts listing things. He's like, Joe Biden did this, didn't he? He did, right? Okay, he did this, right? Okay, he did this, right? Okay, he did it. Now, all of these things are facts, yet the media keeps saying no evidence. So we'll talk about that and a bunch of other stories, my friends. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com, click in the menu bar, Timcast IRL X Miami, and pick up your tickets to our live event in Miami. We hope to see you there. We got Donald Trump Jr., Patrick Bet-David, Matt Gaetz, Luke Rutkowski. We're going to be doing the IRL show live on stage. For those that are coming, we got a bunch of free stuff for you. There's going to be an elite members meet and greet earlier in the day. We got a pre-show. We got an after show. You don't want to miss it, and we hope to see you there. But don't forget to also click Join Us. Become a member. If you'd like to watch the members only uncensored show we will have up for you tonight at 10 p.m. These actually go for about an hour these days, maybe about 50 minutes, and uncensored, not so family friendly, but we actually take calls from you, our members. When you sign up as a member, you join our Discord server where there's a big community of people who are like-minded. There's pre-shows, there's after shows. As a member, we choose one member's company or project to shout out on Fridays. So that could be you. You want to join the Discord just for the community stuff? That's fantastic. You'll also get access to the members only show, and you can submit questions, call in the show live. It's really awesome. And a shout out to all of our Discord members for all the really cool stuff they're working on together with their pre-show, after show, the projects they've built together, the things they're working on. It's really, really amazing stuff. So don't forget to also smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show right now if you really do like it. And joining us tonight to talk about this and a whole lot more is Katy Faust.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Absolutely. Who are you? What do you do?
My name's Katy Faust. I run a children's rights nonprofit called Them Before Us, which looks at every marriage and family and reproductive issue from the perspective of the best interest of the child. And I have a book coming out in 2 weeks called Raising Conservative Kids in a Woke City. Because my husband and I have 4 kids, largely teenagers, 1 college-age kid, and we largely raised them in public schools in Seattle, and
Wow.
They are awesome.
In Seattle?
In Seattle, baby.
You must know some secrets to
We're insiders. We're belly of the beast people. Yeah, I got it all for you.
Right on. So not immediately political, but I think later on in the show, we'll definitely start getting into more of the family, social, and cultural stuff. So thanks for hanging out. Should be fun.
Great to be with you.
We've got Hannah Claire Brimelow hanging out.
Hey, I'm Hannah Claire. I'm a writer for Timcast.com. I'm really excited for this conversation, and it's good to be here. Ian's here too.
I am, and I agree with you, both you guys. I think the nexus of a nation's political health is the family health.
It's
so
kids.
It is, man, and it's the way kids interact with their parents. It's just the beginning of everything. So
Good. Show's over.
Yeah.
That's where we're going to land
we
it.
did it.
It is,
All right, we'll catch you tomorrow.
Good.
See you guys. And I'm actually just kidding. The show is just beginning, so stick around and check this guy out.
Yeah, I'm Serge.com. Let's just get into it.
All right, here's the news from Timcast.com. Hunter Biden indicted on 3 federal gun charges. A judge denied a plea deal previously offered to Biden by U.S. Attorney for Delaware David Weiss. And the story being by Hannah Claire. I'll just ask Hannah Claire what's going on.
So Hunter Biden has had a long and lengthy legal path. So these charges are 1 count of a false statement in purchasing a firearm, 1 count of making a false statement relating to information required to have a federal firearm license, and 1 count of possessing a firearm by a person who is using or addicted to drugs.
Wow, they got him on drugs.
Yes. So the thing is, Hunter Biden is open about the fact that he is addicted to drugs, right? And we'll all remember
Was.
Mm-hmm. I think the alcoholics say it's forever, but maybe not for Hunter
right.
Biden.
Yeah, good point.
So he has had tax charges levied against him. And you'll remember that about 12 weeks ago, he pled guilty to tax charges. He was going to not go to jail and the gun charges. And a judge, about 6 weeks after that, threw out this sweetheart deal that was offered to him by the Attorney General in Delaware. And we all remember this. It was a reminder that we have a two-tier justice system in America, which let Hunter Biden get away with a sweet deal and potentially have immunity on all kinds of stuff. And that was thrown out. And I think that that's a credit to everyone who spoke loudly about how they didn't like it.
I think, what was it, like 2 whistleblowers came out and said, yeah, Hunter Biden's doing this, but they're not going to go after him because it's the Biden family.
Right. And so there was a lot of outcry online. There was also the House Republicans launched an inquiry into this deal to see how the Merrick Garland, who appointed Weiss, and just generally how did they sign off on this plea deal.
You see, I just want to point out, when Timcast.com does a headline, it just says something like what Hunter Biden indicted on 3 gun charges. We try to just be basic and just give you the information.
You want to flash your headline?
I'll look what the Daily Mail wrote. Hunter Biden indicted on 3 felony charges for lying about being on drugs when he bought a gun.
But is that accurate? Because not all 3 of those charges are for
Exactly. But that's a heck of a headline.
Yeah.
I mean, and if you said Hunter Biden indicted on felony charge for charge, singular, for lying about being on drugs when he bought a gun, that's a pretty good headline that hits.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to get people to understand the severity of what it was Hunter Biden is doing in the worst of it, this is it right here. I do, however, think this might actually be a distraction. When we had Brianna Wu on the culture war, and I brought up Joe Biden flying to Ukraine to get a prosecutor fired at the behest of his son, Brianna kept saying, okay, so if Hunter Biden did something wrong, he should go to jail. I'm like, no, not Hunter Biden, Joe. Right. If Hunter Biden did something wrong, I'm like, no, stop. I am not talking about Hunter Biden. This story right here, it's flashy. A lot of people want to hear about it. Ooh, what did Joe Biden's kid do? Yeah, but he bought a gun while he was on drugs. First of all, I have questions about the Second Amendment and whether or not, if you're actively on drugs and you're like out of your mind, yeah, okay, you can't have, that makes sense. You can't have a gun and you're like waving it around or something. But I'm like, if it's in your car and you're on drugs, is that a big deal? You're not going to be driving, right? It's about wielding and being in control of the object. But also, I'm not so convinced it's just because you're a drug user, you shouldn't be allowed to have a gun. I don't, through due process, perhaps, but that's a whole other argument. Ultimately, my point here is the question we should be asking is about Hunter Biden calling DC, saying we're being investigated by this Ukrainian prosecutor, Joe Biden then flying out, and what relation these things have to each other and how they came together. This may be intentional. Mm-hmm. I would not be surprised if Joe was like, look, we know that the White House sent that letter to all those media outlets saying, scrutinize the impeachment, don't let them do this. I wouldn't be surprised if Joe was like, hey, indict Hunter on some non-political thing so we can push the news cycle away from the things I was doing with Burisma and all that stuff.
I think you're totally right. I think letting him fall for some things gets the headlines to be, oh no, he is facing justice, and the average American who is not as well versed in the complicated goings on of the Biden family, which really aren't that complicated. They lied for personal gain, and they lied about their foreign business interests. Will say, oh well, Hunter is facing charges. He is having to own up for things. This is okay, and it's a way of sort of circumventing actually facing the reality that if Hunter's guilty, Joe is definitely guilty.
Yeah, I get the feeling that people are turning on these guys now, this Biden crap. And like, we'll pull it up, I think, at some point in the show. There's a video of someone on CNN just rattling off lies that Biden's told, including that he went to Ground Zero the day after it happened.
CNN's admitting it?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think for the Hunter Biden, the Biden family couldn't keep Hunter in the background for long enough. They tried so hard. Like, I don't remember if you remember the Democratic National Convention when he was running for president. They brought out every single granddaughter. They did not bring out his grandson, and they did not bring out Hunter. They are trying to pretend like there are no males in this family because being a Biden male, I guess except for Beau, is not a good look.
Well, you get bank though, right? Aren't you making bank? I mean, his brothers, his kid.
Yeah, and I love the divorce and the unstable family. It's just great.
I just want to say, Politico wrote this long magazine story about the influence peddling of the Bidens in 2019 called Biden Inc. Huh. And today, 4 years later, the media says there's no evidence. And I'm just like, do you read the news? Apparently they don't.
Do you read yourselves?
They don't.
No.
It's very easy for someone to say that something that they don't see doesn't exist.
I just found out his name's not Hunter Biden.
What is his name?
Robert.
He's Robert Hunter Biden, right?
Yeah.
And his son is something similar.
I'm looking at they posted a picture of the gun form, and his name is Robert.
Yeah.
He's Bobby Biden? Why are we calling him Hunter? Bobby it is. Bobby Biden.
It's not crazy that people go by their middle names. Maybe that's a controversy, but
R. Hunter Biden. You got to put the initial first.
It struck
You gotta-
last
he's
night.
named after one of Biden's brothers, right? There's another Robert
Bob?
Biden.
Okay.
I think I could be wrong.
It hit me last night, and I knew this, but that Hunter had started sleeping with his dead brother's wife
Yes.
while he was still married.
Yes.
He started cheating on his wife with his brother's.
Yes, and I think so the story behind him having this gun, there's this Colt, I don't know what guns are called, Colt Cobra, and he apparently bought the gun, and his girlfriend at the time, Beau Biden's widow, apparently threw it in the trash can in the story to
Yeah,
buy it
school.
away from him.
Next to a
was she-
school, yeah.
Was she cracking out with him? Were they both drugging
I
out
don't know,
together?
but I really feel bad for all these cousins whose granddad is Joe Biden, the sniffer, and then this is their parents' set. This does not seem good. I mean, as the parenting expert in this room, do you advise?
I do not advise. No. None of this.
well-
None of the making sex tapes with your husband and when you're an elected congressman. I mean, none of this.
Well, actually, so I have a question for someone who is a parenting expert. I think I said it before. I think Hunter Biden got molested. I don't know. It's a pretty heavy subject, but when you look at what Joe Biden's doing on camera to these kids, that Hunter Biden has reportedly referred to his dad as Pedo Pete.
Eek.
Then you look at the substance abuse and the behavioral issues. I'm like, that seems indicative of someone who was abused as a kid.
I don't know, but I will tell you this: if your kid gets involved in drugs, all bets are off. All bets are off. I mean, I've seen so many good parents better parents than me, right, who have lost their kids because, one toke, one smoke.
So you're saying that Joe's actually a good dad?
No, I am not. I am saying that if you've got a drug addict, I just know a lot of parents out there that feel really guilty because their kids have substance abuse issues, and that's the problem with substance is it controls you, and there's not a lot you can do to get your kid out of it. So I don't know about the molestation issue.
It's interesting though because Hunter has a substance abuse issue, and so does his sister. Ashley Biden has been in rehab a couple different times, and so there is obviously something going on in this family. I know people say like addictive personalities can run in family, but sometimes addiction is a response to trauma. Now, what is that trauma?
100% true. 100%. Yeah, I don't know what it is. Is the old man sniffing? Is he just too close? Is that last generation with oh honey, come on here? I don't know. I don't know what it is, or is there something going on there?
He's got like anger, rage under the surface. That Joe Biden guy.
So that is 100% true. Like you can see him anytime something gets in the way, and there's the eruption.
Yeah, I'm looking at like a reporter questioning him right now about flying out to Ukraine and Biden being like, no one warned me about that. She's like, they warned your staff. He's like, nobody warned me that what I was doing was wrong. And
how much is that dementia too, though? I mean, like, I guess he's been kind of like flying off the handle ever since he was elected in 1920 or whenever I don't know.
Around then.
1840.
Right. But also, like, that is, why aren't people looking at that and saying, mental decline, dementia, that is what happens when you slip into those kind of.
It could
To
be.
be fair, I think some people are saying that, just
Yeah,
not the people
yeah.
in his immediate care. You know what I'm saying?
I don't want to assume that he beat Hunter up or like squeezed him too hard or pinched him or any of that, but I can definitely
No, worse.
visualize it. Like grab him and be like, you get over here, you son of a... Like
I
really,
think it's
when he's
worse.
like 9 years
Bro,
old and 14 and stuff.
Hunter calls him Pedo Pete.
Yeah, really.
I wonder what Joe Biden
And
could
Peter
have
was
done
one of
to
his-
make his son call him that.
That was one of his aliases was Peter something?
Yeah, Peter. What was it?
I can find it.
Robert Peters something. Was that what it was?
Pedo Pete. Dude,
Right.
you call your dad a pedo?
That's
That's
no good.
some
And
big
then
problems going on.
His sister's diary, right? And she
right.
said the thing about showering.
yeah,
like,
yeah.
that
Sketchy.
was all kind of weird stuff. And I don't want to make these accusations lightly because obviously child abuse is such a serious topic. On the other hand, I have maintained for a long time that there is something deeply troubled in the Biden family. And I think we just get more and more evidence of this all the time.
I wonder what it must have been like for Don Jr. Growing up with Trump as your dad.
He talks about it pretty positively. I mean, I've had a chance
Yeah.
to hear him speak privately about it. And also, with his mom and their heritage, I think they're Czechoslovakian. Also, despite the fact that Trump has been married 3 times, all of his children seem to be close. I mean, they all attended Tiffany's wedding. They seem to have positive relationships with each other and with, Melania, different step parents. The Biden family seems openly much more strained, and I don't think it's a good look that you left your wife for your brother's widow.
I could only say this.
Peter Henderson was the
If
alias.
only he left
Peter
her. He
Henderson.
actually just started cheating on her.
Wasn't it
Right.
Robert L. Peters?
Or look for another
that
one.
one of them?
Right now I have the pseudonym Peter Henderson.
I've met Don Jr. a couple times. He's been on the show. We've talked to him on the show on the phone. We've had him here physically. I've met him at events. He just comes off like a regular guy.
Well, Don,
there's nothing like there is no. He comes off more like a regular guy than people who have like become successful and gotten famous that I know, or like he comes off like a regular guy more than some regular people actually know.
Yeah.
When you look at the Hunter Biden stuff, this is like lifestyles of the rich and the drug addicted,
the rich and the congressman, because
Yeah,
Joe
it's-
is probably only at home 3 days a month. Was in Congress for 50 years or something.
So that
He
would've
spent
been my-
28
yeah.
days a month in Washington.
No,
That would've
he
been my
said
guess.
he was sorry. I was gonna. He was famous for saying, "No, I take the train home to Delaware every night," which means that's worse. If you were a congressman who does have access to your children regularly, and your children don't feel like you're getting the support that they end up in these complicated
totally.
emotional states.
And if he's coming back on the train, he's getting back at 9 p.m. at night.
True.
So
So that would have been my guess. Like if there was something askew, if we don't have our finger to put on, oh, it's absolutely abuse or whatever. It probably just is an absolute father hunger, right? That they did not get the connection that they were made for from their dad because he was off.
I think
whatever. And it sounds like Trump, in some way, even though he had these marital breakdowns, he was able to, by all accounts, stay connected to his kids and meet that need for male love that his kids craved from him and that all kids crave from their dad.
I think when you look at the problems of Hunter Biden and you look at the stats on kids who grow up without dads, there's like a correlation there.
Oh,
So-
honey, we're going all the way on that tomorrow.
Yeah. So Culture War, Katy will be here for Culture War in the morning to talk family stuff more in depth. But I'm like drug abuse. This is like no strong father figure or abusive father who like an abusive father is also not a strong father figure, and it plays into it.
and seeing multiple siblings going through the drug abuse and the.
It's interesting, right? I mean, it's not.
I wouldn't call it a coincidence at
Yes.
face value. I mean, usually there's some thread to tug on.
Some need was not met. There was a need that was not met.
And
That's a
really,
bummer,
they
man.
lost their mom and their sister. Was that it?
Yeah.
His
Yeah.
wife and his daughter. Like that's freaking. That'll rip a family apart if you're not able to communicate about it.
He got sworn into Congress from the two boys' hospital room.
Jeez.
Wow.
That's nuts.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason that his story, I think, caught the attention of the nation, and I think he did build a political career off that. But did he build it at the expense of his children's emotional
right.
well-being?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right. Did they lose their mom and their dad?
Oh
You know?
man, that's what happened to my parents. My mom's mother and father lost one of their kids. My mom's sister, when she was 10, got hit by a drunk driver and killed. And they just receded into alcoholism, the parents, and they were basically left to fend for themselves growing up. Their oldest sister kind of raised the kids. So that can absolutely happen. You lose one and
But let's talk about that father of his, Joe Biden. We got the story from the Post Millennial. Speaker McCarthy demolishes AP reporter over false report that House has, quote, no evidence for Biden impeachment inquiry. This video is absolutely amazing. Let's maybe I can pull it up on Twitter, make it a little bigger. Here, let's play this clip. It's a minute and a half long, and it's Kevin McCarthy talking to an AP reporter. I believe it's an AP reporter.
What impeachment inquiry is to do is to get answers to questions. Are you concerned about all the stuff that was just recently learned? Do you have any concern? Have you asked the White House any questions?
Yes.
Okay. Do you believe the president lied to the American public when he said he'd never talked to his son about business dealings? Yes or no? It's all right.
I can't answer that.
You can't answer that? Do you believe when they said the president went on conference calls? Do you believe that happened?
That's what the testimony says.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you believe the president went to Cafe Milano and had dinner with the clients of Hunter Biden, who believes he got those clients because he was selling the brand?
That's what the testimony
Okay.
says.
Do you believe Hunter Biden, when you saw the video of him driving a Porsche, that he got $143,000 to buy that Porsche the next day? Do you believe the $3 million from the Russian oligarch that was transferred to the shell companies that the Bidens controlled after the dinner from Cafe Milano took place?
So the testimony says.
Okay, then I go back. Do you think the president lied that he? When
But
he
is that
said-
an impeachable? Is lying an impeachable?
Well,
offense?
you want to know. I'm not saying impeachment. All I'm saying is I would like to know answers to these questions. The American public like to know, and that's what impeachment inquiry provides.
So the first thing I'll say is don't calm down, everybody. News organizations do hire developmentally disabled individuals to report the news. And I know it may sound funny, but it's true. This woman doesn't even know what she's reporting on. slow down there. Stop laughing. I am being serious. She is not reporting on an impeachment. Kevin McCarthy did not say we are hereby impeaching Joe Biden. He said we're going to launch an inquiry, which is we will begin to bring together information to ask ourselves the question, should we impeach? So when he points out all of this evidence, and there's so much more, and she agrees it all exists. Yes, it said that. Yes, it said that. But that's not impeachable. Kevin McCarthy's like, I'm not saying impeachment. She doesn't even know what she's reporting on. Welcome to the modern American press. It's sad because it feels like there are so many intelligent people and even average people who just actually watch the videos and look for the evidence to understand it better, who are trapped living in a world where you've got a news media comprised of people who don't even know what the story is they're covering, and their friends and their followers who go and vote.
Well, so that's what I see when I look at that. And I'm like, oh, there's the two Americas. There's the two Americas where like I hear everything that he's asking. I'm like, oh yeah, I heard about that. I heard about that. Oh, I know about that. But you talk to my friends who are on the left and they're like, what are you even talking about? Like Joe Biden has never, what? I don't know what you mean. Hunter never did that. Hunter doesn't do that. Did Hunter even own a gun? I mean, like we are getting two different sets of two different history, two different language, two different lexicons, two different reports. I mean, like we have no way to even communicate because all of us on the right know all of these things and nobody on the left knows any of these things, probably because reporters are like, no.
I'd like to give an analogy. It is, you see, your friends on the left, people we know, many, you see, one day they woke up and they were on this ship where a giant monster with a squid face put a tadpole in their eye, and then the elder brain took over their minds. I'm making a Baldur's Gate reference. Everybody has no idea what I'm talking about.
I thought you were doing like the biblical, like speck in your eye, log in your brothers, whatever. Go ahead, keep going. Tadpole.
Yeah, the opening story to Baldur's Gate. This is not a spoiler. It's literally the start of the game. Is the Mind Flayer. It's a mind that controls you and it infects your brain to mind control you. And so these people are quite literally, figuratively, trapped in this world where they have this machine, this broadcast tower, telling them what is or is not true. Mm-hmm. And these people cannot, they do not have the willpower to ask themselves. A shout out to Brandon Strzok, who he's the founder of Walkaway. He tells this story, and there are many people who have had a similar story of how he broke the mind control. He says that, he saw Donald Trump do a thing with his arm where he's making fun of a disabled reporter. Someone told him, actually, Trump wasn't making fun of a disabled reporter. And he's like, what are you talking about? I watched the video. I'll prove you wrong. And when Brandon finally decided to start investigating, it turns out Trump mocks everyone in the same way. And the actual evidence, the video that was made to debunk that claim is, on numerous occasions, Trump would insult someone by going, oh, look at me, I'm so dumb. One time, one of the reporters had a disabled arm, and they twisted the story to make it seem like Trump was intentionally mocking his disability instead of it just being something dumb Trump does. Brandon said he had like this harsh moment where he actually felt pain, confusion, like, wait, this can't be true. This can't be real. What am I seeing? Imagine just one day you wake up and everything you believe is wrong. Dude, it hurts.
It does. It's suicidally painful. Like I almost killed myself when I found out about the liberal economic order, fiat currency, the military industrial complex, like 2006, when I got this washed over me. And like, it's one thing to learn about all this stuff when you have no knowledge and this is just how you're learning reality. It's another thing to have to unlearn 20 years of data.
What did it for you? Like what shook you out? I mean, what was it that you had to...
Learning about the way that banks can issue infinite amounts of money or near infinite amounts of money with fiat. What does fiat mean? It means faith. It's not even backed by gold. Like I was told, I thought our money had value. It has no value.
But what triggered you to like look deeper? What was it?
War in Iraq, 2006, George Bush, when I found out there were no weapons of mass destruction. I'm like, what? Okay. Now let's go a little deeper. 9/11, I saw the buildings fall in free fall. I'm like, well, they told me that planes knocked them down. Why are they falling without support? The entire buildings. That it was like thing after thing after thing. And then I'm like, why are we in two wars in the Middle East all of a sudden when only one of them is involved with our attack? All of it was very strange. I got more.
There are three great examples from the 2006 area-ish that I think were, shocking to a lot of people. The first was Loose Change. You ever see Loose Change?
No, give it to me.
So it was a viral documentary, Loose Change 9/11 second edition. It was second one that went super viral. And it essentially insinuates a conspiracy or cover up around what really happened on 9/11. I am not saying that the documentary is true. They've actually issued a bunch of corrections. There's a lot of speculation. I'm not issuing an opinion on that. But for a lot of people to watch something like that, it changed their perspective on what the news was telling them. And this resulted in, for me, for instance, I'm working at O'Hare Airport and they play this video for we're watching it. Someone's like, you got to watch this. And I'm like, what's going on? Like some guy brings it in the break room and I'm skeptical on everything, but it did make me think like, was this really in the news? Like these things they're referencing? Cause that's not what I heard. And then I wanted to read more and more about it. To be fair though, I had been online most of my life. So, I'd been well connected to, I've always been reading things, but for the people around me, that was like all of a sudden they were getting a different set of information. The next was Zeitgeist and Zeitgeist Moving Forward. These were two big documentaries at the time around this period. And I think it was Moving Forward, which explained fiat currency and fractional reserve banking. This went viral as well, explaining to people how your money is nothing, how they can just mass produce it, tricking you into working really, really hard for no reason. And then you realize you are living in a house of cards. That documentary comes out and then just give it a minute. The 2008 crash happens. A lot of people got smacked in the face and this shattered trust. I'm not saying these documentaries are true and correct. I am not saying that 9/11, the loose change video is true and correct. I am saying for a lot of people, it shatters their worldview.
Yeah, they might not have all true data in all those movies, but it was enough to get me inspired to start researching that stuff.
Well, if those two documentaries did that for a handful of people, because I never heard of that. COVID did that to scores of people, right? Because, it's a little hard to quantify all the stuff going on with, currency manipulation or fabrication or whatever's going on. I hear about the 9/11 conspiracy. I don't know about that. But you tell me that I need to wear a mask from the entrance of the restaurant all the way until I sit down, and then I can take my mask off, and now I'm okay. And that is enough. That is so close and so tangible for enough people to go, all right.
Hold on there a minute.
F you.
Have you seen the meme where it's a guy standing up and COVID is coming at his face and then he's sitting down and it goes over his head?
They put up those plastic barriers between tables, so you're fine.
Right.
I went to a restaurant that it was in Frederick, the buildings are very small. They're old buildings and the restaurant was very, very small. And I walk in the front door and I'm standing 5 feet from the seat and they're like, you got to put a mask on. And I was like, I'll just sit down. And they're like, you got to put a mask on first. And I'm like, I'm going to literally say, if I sit down, I don't got to wear the mask, right? Like they kicked me out.
Oh no.
Or I should say they insisted I wear it. I refused and left.
I'm just saying like if those two documentaries like deconstructed your institutional trust, COVID.
So,
oh my gosh, with so many people, like now, even like all the moms in my world, they're like, I will never trust my doctor again.
So and you were in Seattle. I mean, that's significant.
This is what happened to me. I went through this phase of I will never trust anyone. I do not trust anyone. And this is like, I'm still reeling from that 15 years ago. But like a lot of people I imagine are going through that right now with what just happened.
Well, like with institutions. But who do you trust? You have personal relationships you trust.
Kind of. I mean, it wrecked me. This, I thought I was the good guy growing up. I'm part of the empire. I feel like one of the stormtroopers and I'm trying to like fix the system, but the Death Star is still heading towards Alderaan. I don't know what to do.
But it's not so simple, right? So let's also use a different pop culture reference because it's always Harry Potter or Star Wars. We use Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones was really good until the last season, mind you. But they had that arc where what's her name? Daenerys?
Daenerys, I think.
Daenerys Targaryen.
I've never seen it, so I don't know why we're
she takes over that city where they've enslaved people, and then she strings up and kills all the slavers. Or all the elites. And then one guy comes in and he's like, my dad was elite, but was using his resources to save the slaves and stop all this. And you killed him. And that's the nuance of it. You can be, Ian, in the empire fighting for good and being principled. And like, no one is perfect in every single way, but you don't have to feel like a stormtrooper on the Death Star. Yeah. You're
it's the woke that won't offer you redemption. We will.
Redemption. It's possible.
Yeah.
But the lack of trust that I have now in my personal life and more in political life is really what I'm talking about.
Yeah, sure.
I imagine people are going through that. So like I almost killed myself legitimately in 2010, but like I didn't because I had good family. The people that are struggling right now, how do we help them come to terms with the cognitive dissonance of like accepting that some of like, because I'm genuinely asking.
Well, hold on there. I'm going to pull up this here video clip you gave to me earlier, Ian. This is from Colin Rugg on Twitter, and it's actually quite amazing. He says CNN is now listing out all of President Joe Biden's lies as the New York Post and Washington Post are also ramping up their criticism of Biden. Weird how they all changed their tune at the same time. Here are the lies CNN now wants to talk about. Witnessing a bridge collapse, grandfather died days prior to his birth, Amtrak conductor conversations, being in New York the day after 9/11, being arrested in a civil rights protest, driving an 18-wheeler, visiting Pittsburgh, the Pittsburgh synagogue where people were killed. Let me just play the clip for you from CNN. If it plays. Here we go.
I don't know if it's similar things, but he's sort of told some stories that don't line up quite like this.
This president has a pattern at this point of either inventing or embellishing stories.
Oh, come on!
It's breaking news from CNN. They're figuring it out.
3 times in one speech last month alone, he claimed he had witnessed a bridge collapse in Pittsburgh when he actually showed up about 6 hours later. He claimed that his grandfather had died just days before he was born himself at the same hospital. In fact, his grandpa died more than a year before in a different state, not the same hospital. And he also repeated a favorite false story that I and others have debunked over and over again about a supposed conversation with an Amtrak train conductor he was friends with, who was actually deceased at the time the conversation would have had to take place. And that's not all. There are some more serious ones in my view. Previously in his presidency, he claimed at one point he'd been arrested during a civil rights protest when, in other versions of the story, he just said an officer had taken him home from a protest. He said he had visited the Pittsburgh synagogue where worshippers were killed in a 2018 mass shooting. In fact, he'd actually spoken to the rabbi, but never went. And he's made a whole bunch of others too. He said at one point, Republicans like to bring this up, he said that he used to drive a tractor trailer, he used to drive an 18-wheeler. Never happened. The White House later clarified he used to drive a school bus at one point as a job briefly. School bus, of course, not an 18-wheeler. So whatever his intentions, whether it's foggy memory about stuff that's going on decades ago or deliberate embellishment,
foggy memory
is an unfortunate pattern.
I love this. I love that Colin Rugg said, weird how they all changed their tune at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's weird, huh?
Old conspiracy theorists. The media is working together to protect the Democrats and Joe Biden. New conspiracy theory. They're all coming after Joe Biden at the same time because they're trying to get him out of office.
I don't hate it though as a theory. I mean, I think part of it is
I still make it lines up.
It's the same thing because they would do whatever they could to protect him, except apparently he is the out guy now. I mean, it is a sign that the establishment that Joe Biden relies on to continue to control the Democratic Party and to stay in the White House no longer wants him, which I think we've known for a long time. That's why he would say, yes, I'm going to run again. And the DNC and his own press secretary would be like, oh, they're still mulling it over. They're still thinking about it. I mean, they have been out of sync for a long time. And I think it's because Joe Biden is declining. And I think that they know they can't actually get a second term. And Kamala Harris is unpopular. I mean, the thing is, Joe Biden has given us some of the best lies, the bold-faced lies from this man. There was one today where he said he used to teach at University of Pennsylvania. Do you think we haven't been paying attention to your entire career? Like,
Right.
when do you think
It's
you
on
did
record,
that?
baby.
Where does that come from? Because I've heard him say that before, that he taught at
Just
Pennsylvania.
somewhere in the deep recess of his brain.
Was he
think.
like an assistant adjunct?
No,
something there once?
dude. Look, 40 years ago, this was normal in politics, and he would never get called out for it. He stole that speech from the Irish guy or whatever, that Irish politician, I think it was.
It's an MP, yeah.
Yeah, and it was in the 80s, and he's like, he had basically drop out of the race
Yeah,
because of it.
1988.
Well, they caught him for that, yeah.
Yeah.
And he never got caught with anything else.
Well, so I feel bad. Like I look at him and I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel so bad
Don't feel
because,
bad for him.
well, he has been lying and he's never been corrected. And so in his mind, everything that he said is true. I mean, like he doesn't think that he's lying.
I'm sure.
And that is the power of this like literally living in one of the most ironclad bubbles anybody could be in. Because not only I'm sure is his family reinforcing it, but all of the biggest mechanisms of communication are validating what he says, or at least not challenging him. So why would you ever doubt yourself?
Yeah, I asked this the other day. He did something. It's impossible to remember because he does so much stuff. But I had said, is this dementia or is he lying? And it actually could be both.
Right.
Maybe he is so used to lying that now that he's slipping mentally, his lies are getting bolder and less. He doesn't have to hide them. He doesn't have to blend them in with the facts.
They're becoming less cohesive and coherent.
Well, consequences change your behavior. And there's been no consequences.
Well, also he's 80. He's thinking,
Also, yeah.
and you know what he's doing after he leaves the press conference? Someone who works for him is like, Mr. Biden, you just told all those people you were a teacher at Penn State. Was it Penn State or whatever?
University of Pennsylvania.
University of Pennsylvania. And he goes, that dumb pricks. And then he gets in the car.
He's
and he doesn't
like, make it true. I'll see you later.
Or he'll be like, no, I didn't. And then they're like, geez, he'll fire me if I talk back to him.
No, it's.
Or he'll beat me if
I
this
think
is-
the movie was Little Miss Sunshine. Could be wrong. Where the grandfather's doing heroin, and he's like, "I'm an old man. I don't care anymore." It's like that's where Joe Biden might be at. He's like, He probably gets in the car and they're just like, well, here's a bunch of bad stuff you did. And he's like, so what? He's like, I'm past the average life expectancy.
He's like, this
Later.
isn't my problem. This is y'all's problem.
Yeah, no, exactly.
I'll see you later. I mean, and that is kind of it. I can't imagine being his staff right now and having to be like, oh, well, what he meant by I drove a truck was actually that he drove a school bus. And we all mix up the word for truck. Or when he was at, I can't remember what the event was, but he was speaking publicly and there was that congresswoman who had just died in a car accident and he was asking for her and they're like,
Oh my
she was
gosh,
just
yes.
on his mind.
Right.
It's not that he didn't realize or completely forgot that she's not alive anymore.
Yeah.
He was just thinking about her. Like they will spin anything they can to make this work. But at a certain point, there are too many loose threads for them to weave a blanket out of.
Yeah, if his son wasn't like deviant, I think they would lie until he left office. But because his son is just so viciously erratic, you can't hide it.
Yeah. I'm like convinced, my favorite personal conspiracy theory is that, Hunter Biden is married again. He's married to a South African film director and they met and got married within 10 days. Which I love romance too, but that seems weird. And they have a very young son. And I'm totally convinced it's a convenience marriage so that when people Googled like Hunter Biden youngest child, that kid would come up instead of his
Navy.
Instead of Navy, the one he had out of wedlock and he's had all this drama with. Like, I think they were trying to make it so that he was like a nice family man and we don't understand. And there are so many grandchildren, you mix them all up. Meanwhile, the Biden family was just completely not acknowledging what was happening until they had to 2 months ago and they released a statement through People.
Do you know if they got a prenup, he and this new wife of his?
I don't. I kind of assume they have one because I think they're pretty standard when you have that much money, but I don't know for sure.
What a sad family.
Yeah,
Really?
I'm just like imagining what it must be like to grow up there.
Yeah.
You know, like when I grew up, it was pancakes in the morning and mashed potatoes and we had Dominic's was our supermarket. And so we'd have like, you know, crummy little T-bones, but my family did what they could. And we'd go outside and play, and I had to come home when the street lights turned on. I could not imagine this family.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I respect the traumas are awful, right? Losing a mom and a sister, but outside of that, it's like Arrested Development.
I mean, I have also lost my mom at a young age, and I have never done crack cocaine.
Wait, what?
You know what I mean? Like,
Hold on.
I'm just saying, it doesn't give you an excuse. You can actually be okay. I think that losing a parent is, you know, and I can speak to it really clearly. Like it changes your whole life and you live with it forever. But, you know, I didn't have, I mean, at least I haven't made any money off of it the way he has. It would maybe be better if I had.
It's interesting because, you know, when you look at parental loss, you look at things like divorce, and by a couple different studies will show that kids suffer more post-divorce than they do the loss of a parent through death. And a lot of that is because, you know, you lose a parent to death. My husband's mother was killed when he was 16, and what happens is everybody surrounds you. They remember together. You mourn with them. You're not alone in your suffering, right? And actually, it is easier to get over and beyond that kind of tragic loss than it is, let's say, if somebody cheats and leaves because the child internalizes that and says, it must be my fault, right? When the parent dies, they don't go, okay, well, she, you know, Hunter didn't go, okay, my mom wanted to leave me, right? But when you lose a parent in other ways, very often the child will internalize it as, I'm the reason.
Why is that? I don't know. I don't understand.
Well, think about it. Like when, for example, parents divorce, let's say it's a no-fault divorce, and the parents just go their separate ways, the child is experiencing the death of their family. Now they don't have their mom and dad in their home every single day, seeing both of them, saying goodnight to both of them. They don't have 100% of mom and dad in their world, which is kind of like a kid's food. Mother love, father love is like social, emotional staples in their diet. So, now they're splitting time, or very often kids lose contact with their non-custodial parent, usually their dad, often within 2 years. And so they're kind of being starved of what they need. But for them, they couldn't figure out why, especially in these low conflict marriages, which is the majority of no-fault divorces. So the kid goes, okay, this wrecked my life. I'm starved of one or both of my parents, and I'm suffering. And I can't put my finger on why this happened. They weren't throwing plates. They weren't yelling at each other. Everything seemed fine. This was out of the blue. It must be me. And most kids of divorce at some point go, I must be the problem.
You know, when my parents got divorced right around when I was like 13 to 14, and I did not experience that in the least bit.
Good.
And, you know, my parents did the thing like, we want you to know this is not your fault. I'm like, no, I get it.
Good.
You're like,
And
I
they're
didn't think it was.
Well, I was like, I know it's not. I was like, you guys are just going, you're arguing. I don't know, whatever. Like,
Yeah.
I think me and my siblings were all like just particularly pragmatic for whatever reason.
Did you stay in touch with both your parents afterwards?
Yeah, my dad was only a couple blocks away.
That's good.
So he was still coming over to the house. My parents still got along. They're just like, my parents are both very pragmatic, reasonable, fairly stoic.
Yeah.
So despite their arguments and which led to divorce, they were like, we're going to work together and understand there's no point in wasting time fighting about things. We're getting divorced. Do what you got to do, and don't like each other, but
you still had access to both, and you didn't have to deal with high conflict, like being the go-between between warring mom and dad or anything.
No, not really. No,
That's good.
I think my parents were just like, there's no point. Like, it got to a point where, and it probably rubs off on me. Hey, yelling isn't doing anything for us, so let's just get divorced, and then we'll facilitate whatever we need to facilitate in a reasonable and like studious manner, or not studious, but like stoic manner.
Good. I'm glad that they were able to keep it together post-divorce.
Yeah, I imagine
that's why I asked,
because one of them bounced and you never saw him. Maybe then, like years later, you start to wonder if I'm the reason. Like if you lose touch with one of them, it might not happen all at once. Basically, it takes. But
that's why I asked, because like I can't relate to that experience. Like my parents didn't just ditch me, right? They got a divorce, but my dad was a couple blocks away, and my parents still interact with each other and everything. And
but I think that's not true for a lot of kids. At least the anecdotal experience.
I had an experience where I was with someone that attempted suicide, and I felt like it was my fault. That was weird to go through that. Like I really felt like I could have done something different, and I probably could have done something different, but it's didn't make it my fault.
I like you. Deep feeler, tender man. All good men are tender men. I'm not kidding. All good men are tender men.
Mm-hmm.
The warrior poet, you got to have a big sword and know when not to use it.
Yeah, but I mean, I just think good men break over the right things.
Like when you're watching a movie and a dog gets killed.
Yes. Oh my gosh, my husband cries more than me.
Yeah, that's like
But he's a good man.
The one thing that makes me not want to watch a movie if there's like a needless dog death. But that's why John Wick did so well, because those writers knew exactly what they were like. We're going to make an action movie where men cry. And it's like right when the movie starts, like his dog, he was given to him by his wife. Like, I'll kill him. And that movie's amazing.
But if sadness, the problem is good to feel it because it's like gets me back to normal. But if it derails me and I'm like, oh, I give up because it's like it hurts so bad. What's the point? I don't want to go through that again. That's when it becomes like a bit of a roadblock.
No, that's because you're not meant to be alone. Like you need other people to help you through that.
Oh yeah.
Well, let's get back to the news.
I'm loving this emotional conversation.
I know, this is
great.
fun. Ladies and gentlemen, I think Joe Biden's going to drop out. I think it is fair to say Joe Biden will drop out. That is a strong opinion I'm having. Nancy Pelosi concedes Biden may drop out of the 2024 race, then laughs and refuses to say if Kamala Harris is the best running mate, because I believe this was on CNN. Anderson Cooper is asking these questions, and when asked if Biden is going to continue running, is there any chance that Biden does not continue running? She says, I hope not. It's actually a possibility. Now, thinking about all of the scandals we've seen so far and impeachment, they need Biden to drop out. They need distractions for this. And we all know it. I mean, there's no reasonable person. Not even the majority of Democrats. The majority of Democrats are saying he can't run. He's too old.
What does that look like then? Like, explain the process then. If he says, I'm not running, so then do they do a primary? Yeah. Do they just appoint somebody? What do they do?
Well, depends on how conspiracy-minded you are. Let's
say I'm low conspiracy.
Low conspiracy mind is Joe Biden is rife with political scandals, facing an impeachment, which everyone thinks is going to be inevitable, and he's too old. The polls show he's too old, so Joe Biden will be asked, Joe, it's time to get a new team in here because we're not going to be able to beat Trump off of your ticket. That's the low conspiracy mind. And then Gavin Newsom says, if y'all are willing to have me, shakes Joe Biden's hand and says, I'm willing to fight for this country. And then the
DNC just installs him as the candidate?
No, primary or something. Okay. Joe Biden says, look, I'm an old man, and I think handing this off to Gavin Newsom is the right approach and something like that. And Kamala Harris says that she's not, she's done what she had to do and she was here for Team Biden and she's only Team Biden. And she understands that if Biden's not interested, she's not going to be here. That's low conspiracy mind. Seems difficult to imagine something like that. High conspiracy mind is powerful interests don't want Joe Biden to run and want a clean path forward, which is not Joe Biden coming out and just bowing out because that makes the DNC look weak, makes Democrats look weak. High conspiracy mind, in my view, would be Joe Biden suffers a medical issue. Gavin Newsom runs out on stage and starts giving him CPR, saves the life of the president. And then the media does this press tour of Gavin Newsom, the man who saved the president. Joe Biden can then say, like, after this medical episode, I don't think it is appropriate to pursue this. Kamala can then say something like, you know, I was here for Team Biden and I'm going to stick with him. If he's bowing out, I want to make sure that I'm working with him on whatever he needs to assist him. And we want to pass the torch to Gavin and a new team or whatever. And that's high conspiracy.
I pictured the most cringe Time magazine cover of Gavin Newsom looking off at an angle and it's saying, the man who saved democracy. It's just the most plastic looking.
And then there'll be a tagline where it's like, facing the collapse of our democracy from fascist threats like Donald Trump, Gavin Newsom saved the one man Gavin Newsom saved the man who saved the country and in turn took up the mantle to save the country himself. Something like that. Yeah. And all these editors are sitting there being like, I can picture it right here.
Are there any pathways where Kamala fights for a spot?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's a million pathways. I'm just saying, like, the reasonable approach. Any smart Democrat, we've seen the New York Times, the Washington Post, both be like, Joe Biden probably shouldn't run. So when you've got the media saying this stuff, you've got the majority of that's like 70 some odd % of Democrats polled to say he's too old to be president. Any Democrat worth their job is saying, we can't run Joe Biden. How do we get him out of the race? And so I got to tell you, my conspiracy theory, it's not really a conspiracy theory. I'm just saying the best way to get Gavin Newsom in and to get Biden and Kamala out is Biden is at a rally in California for his campaign and then grips his chest.
Has a public collapse.
Collapses. Gavin Newsom runs full speed onto stage, throws his coat off, checks his vitals, provides CPR. Medics come in. Secret Service secures the area.
Magically, the TV cameras are told not to cut away.
Yep. All the cameras
they
there,
normally would be. Yeah.
All live. So it's
and then the buildings come down in free fall.
It's a bit too movie-esque and conspiratorial. Like I like the, but I got to tell you, if there was like an evil shadow organization of unlimited resources plotting how you do this perfectly, that's it. Because then Gavin Newsom is on the cover of Time magazine, the man who saved democracy. Joe Biden valiantly saved this country in 2020. Gavin Newsom just saved him. Like it writes itself. And then Gavin Newsom's on a press tour. He's on The View. He's on Real Time. He's on every nightly show. And you've got Anderson Cooper being like, Governor Newsom, what is it like to be the man who saved the president? And then Gavin's just like, look, I'm not here to be a hero. I'm just here to do the right thing that any good red-blooded American would do when faced with someone in need.
Defund San Francisco.
And then, but this kind of story, you know, we were talking earlier about your leftist friends, your lefty friends who don't pay attention to what's going on. You would go to them and be like, yes, but in California, there's human waste all over the ground. And they'll be like, stop insulting the man who saved the president.
Right.
It exonerates all his sins, basically. It makes him this hero.
But
we do have to figure out what to do with Kamala in this scenario. And we've talked about, you know, maybe she would be offered a position in the Supreme Court, or they could give her some kind of honor.
No, this one's actually easy. After Gavin Newsom saves Joe Biden, Kamala walks on the stage and says, I must go now. My home planet needs me.
Yes.
And then she just lifts off into outer space and is gone.
Says, I've actually always wanted to be governor of California, so let's just switch things up. Yeah. She's like,
that is the most difficult thing in trying to come up with how Kamala Harris bows out.
Right.
Yeah.
It could really be her saying that she doesn't know if she was committed to Team Biden because of how much she believed in him, and she doesn't know if she's capable of or if it's reasonable to. And she could do this thing where she's like, look,
she'd get wrecked by the feminists for saying that, though.
Well, no, she could say something where she tries to look humble and say, I don't know if I would provide enough for a winning ticket. I was for Team Biden, and that team is unfortunately broken by this incident, and I want to make sure we win this one. And you know, there's questions about electability and polling. I say the Democratic Party should hold a primary and find the best people for the job. It would come off as humble.
Yeah.
Look, the polls show she cannot win.
But she couldn't have a job in politics again, and I don't think she's ready to retire.
But hold on. I'm not talking about the real world.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And like the most magical
Right, that would be
scenario.
it.
Yeah, I think the other one would be if she pulls Sandra O'Connor and her husband is suddenly mysteriously ill and she feels as though she needs to go spend time with him and just sidesteps out of politics. Because the only problem with the one you presented to me is that the feminists will be like, "You're a girl boss. You can do anything. What do you mean you don't think you can win?"
That doesn't really matter for.
It matters for her and for her legacy. That's what she wants people to go on speaking tours.
Maybe she marries Joe Biden. And then when he gets sick, she's like, my husband needs me.
Jill's listening. She's like, that one step too far, Tim. No.
I have been in here for too long. I have been paying my debts.
I think realistically, Joe will not he will not give it up. Actually, I don't know. Maybe they can convince him to. Maybe they can come in and sit him down and be like, it's not happening, dude.
No.
You're not going to destroy our democracy. Let it go. You're a liability. You got to let it go. And he's got like 9 guys around him all telling him that. He might be like, okay, for the party, I'll step down. Maybe. But then who is it going to be? It's got to be Gavin.
I think he's too power hungry. I think he would step down.
I don't know. He's got to be tired at this point. I mean, he's 80 and I don't know. I don't know what they do to hype him up every now and then so that he's like firing on all synapses. But I just think.
On most synapses?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I just think he might be ready for a break. Maybe.
Yeah.
But he
didn't run in 2016.
could have been a one-term president. He could have said, I've served my moment and we got away from big bad Donald Trump, and so now I'm ready for a younger generation to step in. He could have said that. He kept saying we need younger people. I mean, Mitt Romney just made this announcement saying, if I run again, I'll be in my mid-80s, and I think young people need to be. Joe Biden could have said this. He chose not to, and I think that's because he doesn't want to give it up.
He doesn't. And if he runs again, they're gonna make him debate the media, or they're gonna start insulting him and calling out his crimes and probably imprison him.
He can't do it without media covering.
It reminds me of the conversations around Dianne Feinstein, in like how they're saying, all these organizations, again, feminist organizations in particular, are saying, you did so much for us. Thank you for your time. We really wish you would leave.
Yeah.
And they said similar things about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. They said, there was a whole conversation about whether or not she should retire because her legacy and this, that, and the other, and they wanted someone to be appointed under not Trump, basically, and that didn't work out.
Waited
obviously.
too long.
If they make Biden debate, if he refuses to step down, he debates Gavin Newsom, it's gonna rip the Democratic Party apart. It'd shred their ability to win an election. I can't imagine that having that kind of conflict within the party would be good for their message. And then that would. I mean, obviously, I think they're going to take Trump off the ballot in a couple of states and make it so he can't win. A bunch of people in the Republican Party are going to vote for him anyway and split the Republican Party all up too. So we could end up seeing like 20% for Vivek, 32% for Donald Trump, 31% for Gavin Newsom, 21% for Biden. Like, who knows?
Should be crazy.
But then
I would not be surprised if a Secretary of State in a swing state in October of next year or September removes his name from the ballot and says, sue me.
Maybe I should stop saying that it will happen, though, because I don't want to be blackpilled and encourage that disreputable or disgusting behavior. Like, let the people vote.
Yeah.
Unless there's actual legal precedent to remove him, you let the people vote. They're going to vote for him anyway. They're going to write him in.
There are too many voters that just check Republican or Democrat. And so if they take Trump's name off the ballot, and it's not, here's another thing. His name could be off the ballot in key counties. We saw Arizona. This could be a trial balloon. In Arizona, we know it is definitive. It is proven beyond a reasonable doubt. It is fact. It's in the news. The wrong sized ballots were printed on wrong sized paper. So the machines could not read them. They'll argue it didn't change anything. And that is the most psychotic and absurd lie. The machines are broken at hundreds of locations. Of course that changes things. There's no question about that. But they're lying because it's what they do. Yep. Where was the remedy for these broken ballots? I really don't understand. Like, if I was a judge and someone came to me and said, these ballots couldn't be scanned by the machine, I'd be like, election overturned. Done. No question. It's not, but all these judges are cowards and pathetic, and they're weak, and they're like, I don't want to be the one to say it. Yeah, it's because they're being ponderous judges.
Best case scenario, they're cowards. Worst case scenario, there's behind the
they're in on it.
Deals and stuff. Yeah.
If we're supposed to have an election and the ballots at several hundred locations are wrong, or however many locations, that's it. Sorry guys, it's a do-over. Don't care. It's your problem. You deal with it. We'll now have to have a special election. We'll determine what an adequate amount of time is for preparation for you. But the state screwed up the election process, and it should not stand. But they didn't do that. So the trial balloon is good. Come 2024, don't be surprised if ballots are printed on wrong paper or Trump's smudged or not included on it. And they'll say, sue us.
I was talking to my Uber driver today. Very interesting. And just asking him lots of questions. And, what's the problem in this country? Oh, we're so polarized. How did that happen? Trump. And I'm like, really? You think that Trump is the
just a
reason
one-word
why?
answer?
Yeah, no, he said, and we have to get rid of him. And I said, how do you do that?
Also, he's not president right now, so
Right, but he said
better.
Right, and I was just amazed. I just asking lots of questions. We have to get rid of. How do you do that legally? And he goes, well, they're working on it, but even if they can't do it legally, he just needs to go. Yeah. And it was like it just blew me away. And this was a guy who
was
a cult. Pretty sensible.
They'll have no response, like no reason for you. They'll just say he has to go, and they ask why, and they'll be like, "Well, just because, the thing,
Because and what he said is because he's tearing families apart.
Yeah,
he's tearing friendships apart. And I'm like, you think that started with Trump? And he's like, oh, absolutely. So we will not have wholeness in this country until he's gone.
It started when he was on The Apprentice. He was just wrecking families.
If you illegally got rid of one of the most famous politicians in the United States before he's about to run for president, you would not rebind the United States. That would tear it to shreds. I don't know what this guy's thinking. It's a cult.
Well,
first order thinking.
He is getting one half. Well, he's getting a narrative, and he believes it, and so that's the conclusion. And so anyway, if you're a judge with that narrative and you have the power to do something about it, what are you going to do?
Yeah,
I don't know. I think it's difficult. I think there are people on both sides who feel the division and truly and honestly want to see that healed. On the other hand, it's very hard to reconcile opposite sides when one of them is saying getting rid of Trump is the only answer. In fact, he will always have a political legacy in this country, even if, for whatever reason, something happened, he weren't to win the election in 2024. He has already made an impact. So are you saying that there's no turning back? Because there really is no ultimately getting rid of Trump. He is already a staple in American politics. He made a huge impact on our history. You have to be able to heal the wounds regardless of who was in the Oval Office.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I argued, look, I feel like the sea change happened with Obama personally. And that was when I was not a political animal. Well, to me, that was the first time when I heard the other side saying, it's not that we disagree. It's not even that you're stupid. It's that you're evil. You're evil, true. Right? Yeah. Now it's you're Nazis, you're bigots, you're evil if you don't agree with our progressive priorities. And you can have relationships with people that are wrong or misguided or stupid, but you don't have relationships with Nazis.
Yeah, but they're evil.
Who?
The elements of the left that are pushing their political agenda. You have the malicious evil and you have the banality of evil. The people who march in lockstep, so I'll give you a couple examples. Literally not everybody is evil, but when you have someone say to me, I think the general direction that the J6 trials are going is good.
Right.
And I say, Joe Biggs got 2 decades for allegedly knocking over a temporary barricade. And they say, I don't know anything about that, but I think it's mostly good. That's the banality of evil. When it's commonplace that ignorant people allow evil things to happen. But you then have the people who are running the show, the intelligence agencies, the prosecutors, and the courts that know there's no reason to give someone like Joe Biggs 2 decades for knocking over a barricade. That's ridiculous. Yeah. But they're evil and they want you to suffer. They want you to feel pain. These are people like, the funny thing about video games, and I made a joke about Baldur's Gate. Most people who play video games will understand this. There are many games that have karma systems where you can choose to be good or evil. And the meme online is that whenever people try to play the evil character, it hurts and they can't do it. They can't bring themselves to play the evil character. Unfortunately for you, some people have figured out how to do it in real life. The guy who...
Why does it hurt? Explain that to me.
It's with it, okay. So Baldur's Gate, for instance, or Fallout 3. Fallout 3 has right when you come out of in the beginning, there's a town that's built around a nuclear bomb. Fallout 3 is a game about a post-apocalyptic wasteland.
It's like a bomb that never went off.
Yeah, it's like a megaton bomb. And very easily you can disarm it, or you can trigger it to blow up, killing everybody. And it just, it feels bad. It feels bad to be like, I know none of these people are real, but I can't. So what the joke is, you save, do it, and then load, and having never actually done it just to see what would happen. But there's a bunch of memes where, if you read stories about these video games, people struggle to be the villain in the game. So it's like in Baldur's Gate. I don't want to spoil anything, but let's just say, I'll give a really bland hypothetical. The bad guy looks at you and says, slay the innocent person. And you can choose to do it. And most people are like, I can't. I'm trying to play a villain character for the villain storyline, but you can't bring yourself to just watch this scene where it's a representation of you hurting innocent people.
So does it look like you in the video? Do you look like yourself? Okay. And then is the person that you're hurting, do they look like a real person?
Could be a goblin. Could be a unicorn. Who knows? It could be random.
It's still pretty cartoony at this stage.
Oh, okay,
yeah,
okay.
but it's not that. It's my point with this is not to get into video games and all this stuff. It's just that
it will start to look very real, though.
The people who understand what I'm talking about. If you don't, just try and imagine the scenario. But for people who've played video games and know that you're like, I can't bring myself to be the evil character. There's the guy in Virginia whose daughter was raped or sexually assaulted, and he was at a hearing.
Oh,
when a woman,
school board. Oh, no.
School board meeting.
Yeah.
And a woman said to him, you're lying. That never happened. And then the school board lied and said it never happened. And he lost it. He got angry.
Yeah.
The prosecutor tried to put him in jail. And he said, she is the most evil person I've ever met. We are dealing with these prosecutors. This woman in Virginia knows that a man's daughter was sexually assaulted in a school. She knows they're covering it up. And in her mind, she goes, I'm going to put you in prison, because they get this sick pleasure from just hurting people. It's unfathomable. I cannot understand it. But that characterizes a substantial amount of people in what we would call the culture war left, whereas the culture war right certainly does have these people too, but it's an inversion. There's much less of them. They're less tolerated. People don't like that stuff. On the left, you have the banality of evil. The people who march in lockstep, not asking questions about why you put someone in prison for 20 years. And then the evil person is empowered by the ignorant to torture individuals.
Well, you have to figure out what your God is. What's your God? And for some of them, this school board, woman on the board or whoever's deciding that he goes to jail, she has a God. Her God is gender ideology. Her God is, ultimate sexual and gender freedom. And what do you do for gods? You sacrifice for them. Right. And so if that's your God, then there is no sacrifice that is beneath you, and you must do it to appease your God.
But I agree with you, but I still think we have to be careful in defining what God is, because they're godless.
No, what I'm saying is, what is a God? It's something worth sacrificing for, right? What is it?
Well,
the God is your ultimate aim, the thing that matters most to you in life. And I mean, like, a God will warp your reality. I mean, I think that's what we're seeing with the woke too, is like, if you lift that up, it will warp how you see the world. That is what idols do. It warps your world.
But I want to clarify the definition, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. God to me is the literal definition of God, a higher powerful being beyond us and our capabilities, the creator of all things. They don't have that.
They have something that they serve.
But they don't. They do not have that concept in their minds of a higher power. It does not exist.
They're worshiping.
But it's not the same thing. There is a +1 and -1. These people are either blind and ignorant and will just be party to the collective unwittingly and useful idiots, or they believe they are simply but a wet robot and there is no truth but power, so they will wield it however they see fit. You ask these people, for the most part, they will tell you there's no God and nothing matters. And then you have many people who might say they believe in God, but are ignorant and the banality of evil. They are the commonplace, ignorant person who does not want to know, does not care to know, but will gladly march behind whatever they think is safe.
That might be the case, but they have a hierarchy, as Jordan Peterson would say, a hierarchy of values. Something has to be at the top. That something is going to be served. That something is going to have other subordinate values.
But there isn't one.
But there is.
What is it?
Well, it depends, right? Is it Gaia? Is it the earth? Is it the earth that needs your sacrifices? Because otherwise we're going to burn it to death, and therefore we need to go to zero emissions, and then all of the poor people across the globe need to die because we're serving Gaia.
But now you're talking about an infinite group of infinite different groups of people.
Yes, everybody has something that they are worshiping and serving, and I think that for a lot of people it's sexual freedom, and I have the right to do whatever I want regardless of who it hurts. I mean, if sex, your feelings, your identity, your decisions, if that's God, well, then we see children end up being the sacrifice for that. Something you're going to serve something. Everybody's serving something. And even the people that are just going along, why are they going along? Because you're made to be part of a community. And that also is what religion does for you, right? It gives you a fellowship. It gives you community. It gives you identity. And so these people are finding a God to worship. It's just destructive, and it often involves human sacrifice.
I just again want to clarify the definition. There is a God, and they are lacking one.
So
you can say that they have vestiges or tenets, but they do not have God.
they have a lowercase g. God.
Right. They have a frame. It's not even fair to say that they have a framework. They have a chaotic mass. That's all it is. There's no cohesion to the ideology. They've bounced around from pro-war to anti-war. They at first it was critical race theory, then critical gender theory. There is nothing you can pin their ideology to, because there is not one. Yeah. I've had this argument with people like James Lindsay, like. They are not Marxists. They will support capitalism if capitalism is part of the part of their tribal nature. There's no logic or moral framework to anything they do, and I think it's probably because they are godless.
So their God is their self. That's it, right? And if your God is yourself, that means you get to bend and you get to change, right? That's it. And this is the ultimate original sin. And I mean, I'm talking to you as if my husband's a pastor. Right. I carry my Bible's right here. I read it with everybody that I'm with. So I love God. I know God, but I also know the substitute, which is very, very often. And what the enemy will try to sell you is you are your own God. And that is why you can
but they
bend.
Hate them, like this is my point is they don't like themselves. And there is no nucleus to which they have adhered to.
Yes.
So in order for there to be a God that they worship, there would need to be a centralized structure, which there is not.
That is why. Yeah, that is why people that worship self are, as Hannah was saying before the show, more likely to be depressed. The ones that are being sucked into, all of the different maladies, the social maladies.
Yeah, I think there is a culture within the United States, and I think globally too, that says, ultimately your own needs and your own desires are what should govern your whole life. And if you are completely absorbing, there are narcissists who have very low self-esteem, right? So they hate themselves, but they also are completely obsessed with their worldview and they cannot be proven wrong about anything. They have all the traits of classic narcissism, but also you wouldn't know it because they're covert narcissists. They seem like they are defeatist in some way. And I think it's true that there are so many people who are lacking direction or meaning in their life that they either turn inwards and become obsessed with their own being and validating their own feelings, or they look to be the defenders of something. And so you'll get people who say, well, I'm here advocating for people who can't advocate themselves. I'm here defending, people who are gender fluid, and I've got to be an ally in this, that, and the other. They are looking to represent something because they are so lost in and of themselves.
Well, that's part of what it means to be human, is you are called to something greater. And if you're not serving the greatest thing, you will find something lesser to serve.
I thought that was a good question you asked about the video game trope. Why is it so hard for someone to be evil? I wonder if we should actually do an experiment with that. Actually test people and try and figure out.
Oh yeah, especially as video games are more realistic. When you're in a first-person game and you can actually feel the knife going into the thing, and you can hear the scream.
How do you feel a knife?
Haptic feedback gloves that will vibrate and create pressure when you do things in the VR. Haptic feedback vests.
There's also controllers.
Technology's so fun.
The controllers have pressure resistance now. So when you are like pushing a door open in a video game, and this is much more rudimentary.
Are you in an entire suit?
No. You could be. Yeah. Oh. So we actually have the full VR thing downstairs, not set up yet, where you can actually stand and run in place. But in some video games, there'll be like a door. The door's closed. To open it, you have to hold down R2. Which is the back trigger button on the controller, and it actually resists your push. Whereas normally it just presses very easily. The controller can actually create resistance to make you have to put more strength into it. So with haptics, I don't know about putting a knife into something, but it can squeeze your hand and vibrate and create sensation.
Yeah,
but nobody, that's not common.
No, right. It's going to become more common, these action games where it's so realistic that it's going to feel and seem like you're killing something for real. Like the pig will be screaming and blood will be coming, and you'll be like having to that will create psychopathy in human if that's how they train their gaming, they're killing stuff for real. Like that's not.
I read a thread on Reddit the other day from someone who made a villain character in Baldur's Gate, and it was a really cool looking character, like glowing red eyes and like a crazy face paint, and they're like, I got halfway through, and like every time I'm faced with these challenges, it's like I'm just doing things I really, really don't like and don't want to play the game. Mm-hmm. Like I can't do it, but the game is created as such that you can do the villain stuff or do the good guy stuff or be the rogue or whatever. And there are people like, I just can't bring myself to do it. I would love to do a test where you sit people down and give them like a scene from one of these games, easily scripted with, Oblivion, Skyrim or something, or even Baldur's Gate, and then actually ask people their background, their age, their income, their education level, all of that stuff, their voting patterns. I would love to see voting patterns. Yeah. Maybe we should do this.
What do you think you would see? I'm curious.
I think you'd find Democrats overwhelmingly being okay with, I think you would see, there would be a tendency among people who say they vote Democrat with being okay with a bad thing happening in the game to varying degrees.
Why do you think that is?
Based on the political world that we see right now. When I ask someone, why is Joe Biggs going to prison for 2 decades? And they literally say, I don't care. And I'm like, a human being is being imprisoned by an oppressive state to destroy his life. For what? And they're like, so what? Like, that's evil. That's literally, that is evil.
Is it a form of nihilism?
No, it's evil.
When I think of nihilism, I just think of it doesn't matter. But if they're like, it doesn't matter that Joe Biggs got 22 years, like, is that another aspect of nihilism?
Yeah, it matters, right? It's utilitarian thinking versus deontological thinking. And utilitarianism, in my view, has a tendency towards evil. There are certain circumstances where you can say, we're faced with a difficult decision and we are going to try and maximize life saving. It's not much you can do. You've got 2 school buses about to go over the edge of a cliff. One's got 10 kids in it. One's got 3 kids. Man, you got to go for the bus with the 10 kids in it, save as many people as you want. You can't make decisions on the individuals of the other bus. And this lends itself to the trolley problem. But to go back to Joe Biggs individually, it's deontological morality. You cannot take immoral actions against an individual. It matters more than anything that when it comes to Enrique, when it comes to Joe Biggs and the other Proud Boys that have been overly sentenced and the other J6ers, it matters the world that each of these individuals receive proper justice, and the sentences they got are completely improper. Right. Mm-hmm. The fact that we see Democrats celebrating the torture and unjust rulings shows me the evil rests more so, not absolutely. So if we were to create a video game scenario where your character sees a man holding a cat, and then the guy instructs you to kill the cat, I'd be willing to bet that it would skew to a certain degree, probably a small degree, that Democrats are like, so what, do it. And Republicans would be more likely, no, I can't.
Do you think that they would, yeah, do you think that it would be different if it was, I mean, because like, I don't know, the people that lean left in my life, they don't have kids, they have pets. So I think that they might have a hard time killing the cat.
They'd be like, oh, it's a video game, who cares?
I wonder if that's
right. They'd be dissociated from, like, and they'd say, who cares? It doesn't matter.
If it's less about political affiliation, more about nihilism versus having hope, because some not having kids is like, well, what is there to live for, really? What's the purpose? And everyone says, let's having kids.
How about this? We get 1,000 conservatives, 1,000 libertarians, 1,000 liberals, 1,000 independents. And then, to what degree we can get communists, socialists, fascists, whatever. And you make maybe 300 of each encounter a different scenario. A Republican is shown a video game scenario where a Democrat is holding a Republican by, on his knees with a weapon and instructs you to commit an act against them. In the video game. It's just a video game. It's not real life. You're fine. Then 300 Republicans are presented a scenario where it's the Democrat on the ground. Then where it's an independent on the ground. And then you see, are they more or less willing to commit? Are these groups based on the political affiliation of the characters in the game?
Be interesting. I think this is a great research institute to start for Timcast University. Didn't we watch that a couple weeks ago?
Imagine a scenario in a video game where, and I quite literally mean a video game like Skyrim, and you have the villain, let's say he's a demon, quite literally a demonic figure with big red wings, and there's a man on his knees wearing a MAGA hat. And it's like he's wearing knight armor and he has a sword, but he's wearing a Trump hat. Mm-hmm. Would the Democrat voter be inclined to serve the devil master in the game?
I was going to say, it's sad to think that someone would be more likely to attack someone or let someone suffer based on their clothing. But then I was thinking about military uniforms, and I mean, that's the whole purpose of uniforms. Is who to make suffer and who not to.
And there were, I think in 1 year alone, there were 800 instances where Trump supporters were physically attacked on the streets at random.
Like, at what point does civilian clothing become a military insignia, a militant symbol? The MAGA. I don't think of it as a militant symbol.
I think there was this study that Teen Vogue, I think, commissioned. They published about it this week, saying that the overwhelming majority of men and women, they ask them about their red flags and green flags in dating. It's
yes.
so fascinating.
You wrote about this,
I
didn't
did write
you?
about this.
I read it before
I'm going to talk about my own
Nicely
work.
done.
Thank you so much. So what I find interesting about this is because it was largely framed off of political stuff. So the overwhelming majority of both men and women said if someone identified as a MAGA Republican, that would be a red flag.
But men said communist.
Men were more likely to lean towards communists. Still, 55% of women also said it would be a red flag or communist. But fewer men thought someone identifying as a liberal was a red flag than the men that thought someone who believes in astrology was a red flag. I mean, there are limits to the political affiliations, and I think there are, like, I'm just saying, wait, hold on, I want to say, to your point, it is interesting to me that they were willing to forgive liberals more than they were willing to forgive MAGA conservatives. The way people perceive your political affiliation does, I think, impact how they view you.
These were red flags. It didn't say they would not date. It did not say they had disdain. It said it was a red flag. That's it. And I don't care who the guy is. If there is a beautiful woman and she's got a communist flag pin.
Oh, yeah, he knows he can change her political affiliation.
No, he doesn't care about changing her political
deep down,
affiliation.
he knows he can change
He's
it.
just like, yeah. The woman may see the guy with the MAGA symbol and be like, I can change him.
For sure.
But more importantly, anyone, I got to be completely honest, guys, especially Trump supporters out there. Yo, if I'm not in the dating market, but I just have to say, like, if I met a woman and her whole identity was like, I'm a MAGA Republican, I'd be like, that's kind of weird.
Anybody that I...
It should be super weird.
Like, even if you're a Trump supporter, just being like that would be like, oh.
And it works the other way too. Like, more women were more likely to think it was a green flag if you said Black Lives Matter, right? Like, but why? Why does that matter in who you're dating? Well, because they're looking for political compliance in a way that they find to be acceptable. Women were more likely to they would value talking about politics more than men did. Men actually didn't care about how often you talk about, the majority of men don't care about how frequently you talk about politics. Men were more likely to think it was a red flag or a green flag if women drank cow's milk over any kind of non-dairy milk. Yeah. Like, women were not thinking about this at all, but people are, especially based on gender, they're evaluating your political and cultural behaviors in these sort of small ways, and it gives you an insight into what you're doing. So I think this study on video games is actually really fascinating. I think it could be interesting to see if people were more willing to hurt people based on political ideology, even if it is in a video game. If they're and you'd have to find a way to like test out if they were willing to hurt people in video games at all.
I'm so curious, and hopefully you guys, well, you probably have already seen it, but let me ask you each, how often do you guys think about the Roman Empire?
Fairly often.
How many times? I mean, per week, per day?
Probably
where are you at?
3 times a week minimum.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah. Just probably. I mean, we talk about it on the show.
And I see clips of it and stuff, which remind me. So I don't know if that counts.
Yeah, it does. Like, how many times does it come to mind is my question.
The Chosen keeps popping up on my TV randomly.
Sometimes I'll watch like
so
a
it's 2-hour documentary. It's literally all the time.
Okay.
If I watch something for 2 hours straight, does it just count as thinking of it once? Because I think about it for 2 hours constantly.
So have you seen this? The TikTok where the woman is like, "Oh my gosh, my husband thinks about the Roman Empire like once a day."
Yeah,
and I mean, like, then I saw
never
all these
think
other
about
women.
it.
Oh, I was thinking about the Roman Empire earlier, actually. So maybe it's more than 3 times a week.
Yeah. I was watching a show earlier, and it this is not me choosing to think about it, but The Chosen came on, and there's Roman soldiers.
I picture the Northern Italy
There's
map.
that joke that at a certain age, men have to decide if they're going to get really into grilling or World War II history.
Oh my God.
Like,
so good.
There are things
Civil
that
War.
men, that was not a question. I was never
No, it's not even I texted my husband, I'm like, do you ever think about the Roman Empire? How often? He's like, about once a day.
Yeah. My dad and older brother referenced the Roman Empire my entire life growing up. I felt like, number one, I was not that interested in it, but
Men are from Mars,
think
women are
about
from
it
Venus,
all the
man.
time. Yes.
This is correct.
Vespasian.
Yeah.
This is correct.
Women are shocked to find this out. So as much as many women don't like Fresh and Fit, are you familiar with Fresh and Fit?
I listened to your Culture War episode with my 16-year-old on a road trip. So we have lots to
talk about.
Yeah, that's actually how we parent. We listen to it and we discuss.
They mentioned
cool.
women don't have hobbies. And it's a shocking thing to men to discover. And I was
that
like...
was in your little...
This is something Teen Vogue asked about too.
So they said that when they bring women on their show, and they say it's average women, but I really do think it's Miami local women, so they're choosing from a select batch. But they say, when they ask women, like, what do you do for fun? They go, what do you mean? And he's like, what do you do for fun? Like, what do you do? And they're like, I don't know. Like, I hang out with my friends. And like, yeah, but like doing what? Like, we go out. Like, but what? Go out. What does that mean? Where do you go? And like, what do you mean? What do we do? We just go out. What are you talking about? Like, the women are confused by the question.
Well, so men and women are different. Okay.
Right.
And this is the difference. Women form relationships face to face. Men form relationships side by side. So it really is it's a different thing.
Oh, yeah.
Men form bonds doing things together, like going to war and playing on sports and building a shed. Women don't need to do that. Hannah and I sat down before him. We're like, just tell me about your life.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Well,
where did you go?
You referenced Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. When John Gray wrote that, one of my favorite things that I read in it, by the way, my dad kept recommending that to me because he was like, you just need to know that they're not the same thing. But one of my favorite observations that Gray had was that men go to lunch to talk about something. They go to lunch to be like, we've got an issue, we got to talk about this, we're going to make a business deal. And women will go to lunch to gather information, right?
Yeah.
It's a reason that like, I have multiple female friends. I can be on the phone multiple times a week for 4 hours because there's just stuff to talk about, man.
But it's people versus things.
It's very different.
Subject
They
versus
serve-
object.
This is true. This is right.
Chemical bonding has these elements too, like ionic bonding, where you guys would be interacting, sharing an electron, bouncing it back and forth, or a covalent bond where you're sharing it together. Then there's metallic bonding, where all the electrons are headed in one direction and we're all protons witnessing it. That's like the male communication tactic, is a metallic type of bond where we're all focused on, on
simply
something
put,
together.
It's object versus subject. So the meme is that when women take pictures of objects, it's a picture of themselves next to the object. Men will take a picture of the object. So this popped up on Reddit because a guy would be like, hey, just got a new video game, and it's a picture of the game. And women would be like, look at the game I got, and it's them going like this, holding it.
Is it better to say, instead of that men communicate metallically, women do it ionically, or however you were saying earlier, is it better to say that the masculine form
That's just too esoteric.
Yeah, the masculine form of communication is focusing on a thing, the feminine, because it's not always women that do the feminine behavior. Sometimes men are feminine and women are masculine, or we each embody both.
Yeah.
So, because I do enjoy the cross communication you were saying women generally do. I do it a lot more than normal guys.
Sure.
Let me just give you a Family Guy reference. When Peter goes to a clinic to get like medical tests on him to make money or something. I can't remember the exact reason. And they're like, we're going to give you the squirrel gene. And then he turns into a squirrel. And they're like, we're going to give you the Seth Rogen gene that makes you seemingly funny, even though you're not saying anything that's funny. And then finally they give him the gay gene. So Peter becomes gay. And then he calls Quagmire or Joe or something. And he's like, what you doing? And they're like, what do you mean? You called me. And he's like, what you thinking about? What? What are you calling me for? Yeah. Like for guys, it's just like, what? Why are you asking me these questions?
The one I see on Instagram all the time is girls, like husbands pretending to call wives like the way they want them to. And it's just like, hey, it's just on my lunch break. Like, what are you doing? Did you get your nails done? Oh my gosh, did you ask Andrea about whatever? And it's the opposite is girls will, like, it's infuriating to women that if you have like a boyfriend who goes on, to golf with all of his friends, and then you're like, oh, how was it? And they're like, it's great. Yeah, how's Joe doing with Andrea? I heard that they were going through some rough times. He's like, I don't know. Oh, they broke up. I'm like, what? When? I don't know. They have no details for you. This is what women live for. But it's because we serve different purposes in society. So our communication obviously is different. We're hardwired to seek out different information. That's why it's good to have both people on the team, right? You want people having different conversations.
Or mom and dad when you're a kid.
Oh, Tim. You get 1,000 them before us points. Good job.
But,
does he get a certificate too of that? How do we credit these points?
Oh, I just keep track.
Okay, that's nice.
Okay, that's great. It's like Hogwarts.
Yeah,
the house cup.
You don't need to understand.
Oh, okay.
Is your honorary degrees?
Yeah, no, I'll give you whatever you need. You just keep cranking out the,
I want
good content.
The house cup.
The wisdom.
Yeah.
And I beat Ian.
But I think it is.
I win.
Timcast University has a house cup. It's very complicated. You'll have to hear about it in our research institute. Okay. But I do think that there is something really valuable to acknowledging that men and women's communication is different, but that doesn't have to be bad. It just is one of the reasons that correct. I think monogamy is great, because you only have to figure one woman or one man out, right? You don't have to figure all of them out and get good at communicating with them and learn to change your communication in a way that isn't emotionally satisfactory. You just have to figure out one person.
And there's these general distinctions that are generally true, and then every husband and wife is going to break the mold in some way. So like I am very low emotion, and it's actually really sabotage to my husband in a lot of ways, because he's a pastor and that's a high shepherding, high counseling, and he's very, very good at it. But, I'm like, honey, just give me the information. What do you need? Just get right to it. I don't have a lot of time. I'm going to be here for another 5 minutes. We can have this conversation. I'm going to continue roasting these Brussels sprouts. Okay. But I just need you to just get this to me really fast. And then he'll go to work or go to church, or he'll talk to somebody and he'll go, why did you choose this color for the bulletin? And the woman would be like, no. And so it's like, I'm so kind of low emotional needs. And generally women aren't, they need a little more hand holding. They need a little more like building up. And so he has had to unlearn some of what I've taught him. But yeah, like we don't fit into a mold. There are personality differences, but there are also generalities that tend to hold true.
Well, women are communists and men are capitalists.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, tendencies, right? So if you look at the voting patterns, I'm being hyperbolic to a certain degree. When you look at voting patterns, women overwhelmingly vote Democrat. If you look at a map of the United States, if only women voted, it's every state's blue except for one.
But isn't that single women?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then if you look at only male voters, it's every state is red but one. The question about women voting Republican is, are women who vote Republican more likely to get married, or are women who get married later more likely to vote Republican?
Right. So we know that there's a correlation. We don't know if it's conservative women who have more children, because really it's not marriage, it's child rearing, right? Yeah. Women that have more children tend to be conservative. Or does having more children make you conservative? And I understand the kind of communist socialist thing, because the only place that socialism really is effective and natural is in the family, right? That really
small
is
scale, personal, and five people.
Like unconditional commitment. You know, you do what you can. Those that have less still have their needs met, all of that kind of thing. That is where it needs to take place. So I understand that women being a little more nurturing, social, family-oriented, others-oriented, because we are, that would make sense, because then they take their little like micro-society and apply it to the whole nation.
Yep. I've found, maybe you guys can confirm or deny as females, that generally the feminine, if a woman complains, she just wants you to listen and understand. Whereas if a man complains, he wants a solution to the problem. Yep. I don't know if it's not always every time, but I'm wondering if you guys agree with that, because I found it excessively successful in my relationships.
I think it's a good place to start. I will say again that in my relationship with my husband, I would say literally because he's a good man, he is intuitive and he is very in touch with what's going on emotionally with me and my kids. And so he is more long suffering when it comes to listening. And maybe because I'm really, really busy, I don't have time for the deep emotional rabbit trails that we go down. So I don't know if it's just personality or if it's kind of stage we are in life. I'm so busy that I don't have time for the deep emotional dive. And I personally don't need it. But if you're a guy, I would recommend defaulting with, just listen to her. Yeah. And then maybe ask, do you want a solution or do you just want me to hear you out?
Did you guys involve therapy, raising 4 kids and stuff? Like, was there ever like external therapists and stuff that you guys would go to as a family or individuals that helped you?
No. Well, we did do a deep marriage counseling about 4 years ago. Like, most marriages go through a rough spot, and we did. We had like a year or two where I felt more like enemies than friends. You just have to push through that kind of stuff. So we did have to do a very intense marriage week of therapy to like do our realignment. But largely, it's been fine. It's been great. Largely, it's been great between us and between our kids. In terms of therapy, not therapy, but you've got to read good information. You've got to find other people that are parenting well, that are a few steps ahead of you, because you need that on the ground intel. What did you do for this? When your kid acted this way? How did you talk with them about this? I mean, there are things that you are not going to know unless you see somebody else do it successfully and glean their wisdom so you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
How'd you find those people?
At church. Go to church. I'm not kidding.
No,
I don't care.
I'm laughing because it's why we had church for so long.
Correct.
Whether you're religious or not, it's where people come together and your community shares resources, knowledge, information,
values,
and it's been shattered.
That's right. And we say that in our book, our Raising Conservative Kids in a Woke City. The entire last chapter is called Find Your People. Like, you might think that you are the only conservative in Austin or Chicago, but you're not. There are other people that share your values. They are at church. And you know what? I don't care if you disbelieve that a guy can live for 72 hours in a whale's digestive tract. I get it. Maybe you're skeptical. But do you want other people that are going to fortify you and your children and tell them that they are not crazy for choosing not to wear the mask with the little cutout for your French horn? Go to church. That is where you're going to find those people. So even if you don't believe that the Bible is the divine inspired word of God, you need the people that are at church. Go there. Don't go to a church with a female pastor. Go to a real church.
How come? What's the problem with female pastors?
How much time do you have?
I think we got like 3 minutes before we go to Super Chats.
What? Well, then let's just get this over with. My next book that I'm going to co-author with my husband is called Headship. And it's why God designed there to be headship. That is not domination, control, or chauvinism. It's headship, it's leadership, it's primary responsibility in two institutions. And it's not government, and it's not academia, and it's not business. It is the home, and it is the church. Men are supposed to be the heads of those two institutions. Why is that? Because those are the two institutions responsible for human formation, and men are not optional in the project of human formation. And when men are made optional, they leave both the home and the church, and that's what we've been doing.
I think one of the issues we have in society is that socially we've made it being a follower is a bad thing to be. It's a bad thing to be a follower.
Jesus followed the Father.
And so what we have is everyone's being told you want the followers, right? Your social media. How many followers do you have? There is nothing wrong with being a follower. I follow several people. There are certain people that are famous, that are celebrities, and I'm super excited to meet and talk to. There are people excited to meet me. I was talking to Meet Kevin, and one of the things I mentioned was it is okay to be a follower, and there is honor and respect in doing so. And this lends itself to, like feminists are like, no, I have to be in charge all the time. I feel like a lot of men don't think that way. When I would play video games with my friends, there was no leader, there was only leading. So we would play The Division, for instance. It's a 4 people team up, and you play like special agents going in and like stopping bad guys. And we'd be like, hey man, you've done this run before, just tell me what to do. And he'd be like, okay, let's go. And then be like, hey, go there and stay back. We're gonna go in front. And I'd be like, you got it. There was I did not feel slighted or disrespected in any way that someone was telling me what to do. I trusted them. So my view is kind of like, why do we love dogs so much? One of the reasons is loyalty, because the unquestionable loyalty to you, they trust you and you trust them and you have their best intentions. And they know that if they trust you, you'll take care of them. And we love that about them. We mourn for our dogs. Cats are silly and they're funny, but they're totally independent. But so now we have a society that says you're bad for being the kind of person that is willing to trust in a leader. There's got to be a fine balance, right? You need to be someone who pays attention, who learns enough, but you need to also surround yourself by people you can trust. And there's nothing wrong with being a follower or being a leader. Both have their good components and their bad components. A leader is nothing without loyal men and women who are behind him supporting the vision that he has and trusting and believing in it.
You can also be a leader and a follower at the same moment. Like
Right.
Adam Sosnick, who works with Patrick Bet-David on the PBD podcast. He's an example of someone that he's a follower on the PBD podcast. He's number 2 to Pat. But he's a leader in his own personal life where he runs, I think, a Fortune 500 company that he's the leader.
Right.
And you need that first follower phenomenon where a really great leader is only not gonna go anywhere until someone steps up and says, I believe in you. I believe in him. And then all of a sudden, all these other people will be like, well, if someone else believes in him, then maybe there's something to him. I'll believe in him too. And so that's an important role to be a follower.
So, and that's the role. That's what you said. The word that you said correctly is role. This does not have to do with, well, this is the smartest. Well, he's the most talented. It is no, this is your role. And in these two institutions, it is a male-only role from God's perspective. And this actually aligns with a lot of the ways that we're naturally wired, right? Like we were talking before about men having more connections between the back of the hemisphere to the front of the hemisphere in their brains. So they tend to be a little more driven, more focused, more alert to threats. That is very important when you're at the head. Women tend to have more connections between hemispheres. We can jump around a little more easy. We're a little more wired for connection. That works very, very well when it comes to caretaking and socialization. And those two things happen pretty easily in the home and the church. Leadership is harder. And we need to encourage men to move into those roles.
People just need to get chickens.
Deciding who has to go.
Because you got to watch. You got to watch them. The rooster does the dude stuff. I'll tell you this. Every Friday, we have sushi and poker here at the castle. So tomorrow, once we wrap up the show, big order of sushi comes in. Everyone eats together and talks, and then the leftover sashimi goes to the chicken coop. What do you think the roosters do when we throw the fish into the chicken coop? They keep their heads alert and they look up and watch as the girls eat. Man. And it's rough because we're like, we want the roosters to eat the fresh fish. It's very, very good for them, but they just wait and let the girls eat it. The boys are just like, nah, I'm good.
Is there any food where they will be like, I want that?
Some, like, I'll wait until little Luke is like by himself and I'll toss a piece of fish to him and then he'll look down and very slowly like look at it and he might take a bite or look up the hens will run over and just annihilate
That's
it,
like
and he'll just stand there.
The inverse of wolves, because I think with wolves, the male alpha male will eat first, and then all the other ones will protect the alpha male while it eats. I don't know if that includes the females.
With wolves, and I think it's true with lions too. There's a hierarchy of who gets to eat. I don't think it's necessarily just the gender. It's like the elder. It's like seniority or something. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not simple.
But it is really funny. We had our old chicken coop. We had a hawk attack, and we only had 7. And Roberto runs. He leads the girls to the door to go back into because the coop was fully covered and had a little door. He runs to the door. They all follow him, and then he stands next to it and waits as they all run in, and then he goes in behind them.
Chivalry in action.
So gender roles in society, I know we're not going to talk about tonight. Maybe you guys will talk about it tomorrow on the culture war too, but I think that reason, and I don't want to make general claims about women in power because a lot of women have masculine behaviors and aren't this, but the desire to nurture and mother without children comes out in like HR, comes out in women in positions of power and with money involved is they'll try and parent their employees or the people.
There's an overabundance of women in nursing, right? And we never think that's a bad thing, except for every once in a while someone's like, we should have more men because of gender equality.
Well, and it's the same thing in elementary school. You have tons of female teachers like, why aren't there more male teachers? Well, because we are wired for this.
Yeah. Why would you take that away from them?
If they get
why
stuck
aren't there
in the
more
positions,
female sewage treatment specialists?
Like if they're supposed
to nurture it the same
in a
way.
position where their real job is to fire the idiots and hire the good people and penalize and ruin the people that are messing up, that might be challenging for someone that wants to make sure everyone's healthy and taken care of naturally.
So female judges actually hand down guilty sentences less often and less severe penalties, right? And it's great to be a nurturer. It's great to have that kind of social awareness. It's great to be high in agreeability, which is what women are. But when it comes to justice, when it comes to gatekeeping and protection, no, you don't want that nurturing role to take over.
You ever see that video where there's a dude being sentenced or he's being like arraigned by a judge, and then the judge recognized him? They went to grade school together, and there's her. She's become this judge, and he's become the criminal. And she's like, did you go to this elementary school? And he's like, oh my God. And then she's like, I remember you. I went to school with you. What happened? You were so nice. We were friends. And then he starts crying and breaking down saying, oh my God, over and over again. I'm like, you want to talk about how you reduce recidivism? That is that video is crazy. She's being.
It's a real video. It's real.
I mean, my assumption is real. It's just a video. It's on the internet. But she may as well have done the Indiana Jones Kali Ma and ripped that guy's heart clean out, because that was probably the most brutal thing that guy's experienced in his life. And if there's anything that makes someone feel regret and remorse, it's that kind of experience. Being like, we went to school together, what happened to you? And then seeing a reflection of what you could have been and what you've become. I hope that guy, turn things around.
Well, and then that's not to say that women do not have a critical role to play in formation, but it's women have what my friend Glenn Stanton calls a soft power to shape the world. It's not through this is right, this is wrong, do this, don't do this. It is this soft influence. And that actually is why you see massive behavior change in terms of work hours and pursuit of different higher degrees, adopting more responsibility. When men get married, their behavior changes, because I was listening to your Fresh and Fit with the manhood, right? And you said, well, what is manhood? And the answer is taking responsibility for yourself so you can take responsibility for someone else. That is what manhood is, right? And so it's important for men to do that. They can't become a man until they take responsibility for a wife, and they change. Sociologists call this, they have a term for this, and it is that women civilize men. Their behavior changes in such a way, and for the better. More pro-social behavior, more responsibility.
And married men live longer.
I can define what it is to be a man very simply. It is, you're on a, let's just say you're in a nuclear power plant that is going into lockdown, and the blast doors are closing, and you have to run up and grab the door with all your strength as it's pressing down on you and crushing your bones, and you have to hold it as long as possible so that everyone else can escape. Better one is being a man is working security for Morgan Stanley on 9/11 and making sure all of your employees get out, and then once they do, knowing that there's still 10 or so in there, and rushing back into that building to make sure they get out, and then no one ever sees you again.
And Daniel Perry on the subway, protecting the women
Penny, yeah.
from the psycho guy who's threatening everybody and puts him in the responsible, not chokehold, what's that called, where you kind of subdue the guy's submission hold, you know, and Daniel Perry then just... Penny.
Because Perry was the guy in Austin who was approached by the guy with a rifle and shot at him. Yeah. So there's Penny and Penny. But this is it.
That's masculinity.
There are people, many men who complain that men are disposable. And it's like...
Absolutely not.
But technically, yes. It is not disposable as a whole, but as individuals. The question is, would anyone disagree? Is it better that Penny, knowing the consequences of what would happen to him, moved to save those people, or should he have just stood back and said, I don't want to go to jail, let him suffer? Being a man is when you run into battle.
That's right.
To fight for what you believe in and save everything you love and hold dear, knowing you may never come home. It's running into a burning building, knowing that this could be the end for you. But it all goes back to it's biology. Evolutionary biology creates the gender roles. If you have 100 men and 100 women in a society, and 99 women die, that's it, you're done. Your tribe ceases to exist. You cannot have more babies. If 99 men die, you will be in trouble, but you might be okay.
There could be some inbreeding challenges in a future generation.
But we get past it.
But it's still not even that bad. It's not good, but it's not as bad as having one woman who can only have a baby every 9 months. When you have 100 women and one guy, that guy's got to work really hard.
Eat a lot of avocado.
Yeah, that's
He's
right.
Nick Cannoning out, you know what I mean?
But mathematically, you can recover from that if all of your men die. And that's the reality, that men can run into battle and sacrifice themselves, and your civilization can survive because of it. Right. But if women sacrifice themselves, your society is over.
There's even that phenomenon where like a bunch of men are born after war, you know?
But we do got to go super chats. We went a little long. Let's go to super chats. If you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button? Subscribe to this channel. Share the show if you like it. Head over to timcast.com, where we will continue this conversation in the members only uncensored show, and probably get a little spicier and not so family friendly with it. And then we will take all of your calls as members. Not all of your calls, maybe 5 of your calls, but that's about how much we do. But for now, we will read your super chats. Clint Torres says, howdy, people. That's right, Clint. You are the first person to super chat. Congratulations.
Good job.
Do you get a prize?
Just I read a super chat.
And just honor. You know what I mean? Some bragging rights, some honor.
Yeah, it's like...
You should give out Tim Pool points.
Yeah. You know, there you go. 100 points to House Torres. There you go. Congratulations. Australia is not real. Just ask a flat earther, says. Just trying to be the first. Second place. Sorry.
Second. Oof.
Tim P., a member, not me personally, says... Join timcast.com for access to our awesome precast pregame on the Timcast members Discord, as well as call-ins and the Discord after show. #Bert.
I think the Discord is so cool. I don't understand how to use it, but
like
they have so much going on there.
Yeah. It's like a little city.
It's a whole city. I think it's everything.
And I want to make it a point to keep shouting everything that the community is doing out, because I say like, hey, if you sign up to become a member, you can watch the members show. It's like, well, actually... Join the Discord, and there's a lot of stuff you can do, and all the members are building things, and it's amazing. There's a pre-show, there's an after show, there's various chats on different subjects.
I think there's even like a women's Bible study. Like they've got all kinds of. I'm pretty sure I could be wrong. Like they do everything, and I think this is cool.
And you'll love this one. We're opening a coffee shop, and we're going to be doing what's called Saturday morning cartoons.
Oh, really?
Saturday morning, we're going to play family-approved cartoons, educational stuff. Depending on the age of the kids, on average, it'll range from like, very simple ABC 1, 2, 3.
Are you making the cartoons yourself?
No, but we could theoretically use Daily Wire. They have Chip
their
Chilla.
kids program. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then there's Tuttle Twins.
Yes.
And what we do is we're going to bring catering breakfast, maybe like 7 a.m. Saturday mornings. And the idea is that parents can come with their kids, hang out, have breakfast, everybody eats, the kids can play with other kids and socialize, and the parents can meet other parents in the neighborhood. And so it's trying to create like half of what church was for people to build community and meet their neighbors and.
I've been studying you, Tim Pool.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, I have. I had a good friend of mine, a young 15-year-old named Titus, who's
Oh,
a
yeah.
huge fan of yours, do some reconnaissance and put together a rap sheet for
And
me.
he put that together, so you knew that already?
No, he gave me all the other stuff. But
okay.
I've been listening to your shows, and I love the idea of your franchise, not franchise coffee shops. And I love the idea of the community. And I love the idea of the alternative culture that you're building. And I just think it's great. I think it's great.
My goal right now, the mission, is to create the public square.
Yeah.
And that is anti-Times Square. Times Square was named for, I think it was Times of the World, the New York Times, basically. It's elite as they come. The big owners of this big building, and they control, they get the name of the space. And now it's this big commercial, multi-billion-dollar thing. We want to create the anti-Times Square. And it's these business. So I'm looking at, so it was Ian's idea. He was like, we should call it the public square. And I'm like, let me ask public square how they think of, like what they think about it. They're super excited.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Someone on Twitter actually mentioned that. That wasn't my idea.
yeah. And so I'm trying to set up a meeting with them. I'm like, imagine there's just this downtown in a small town in West Virginia where you've got Cousin T's Diner, Papa Jack's Pizza Shack, Cass Brew Coffee. You got a My Pillow store. Insert
Dude,
any
digital billboard. We got to get a big digital billboard.
Well,
And
I don't
public
know.
square. We'll just run public square ads on it.
We can get a billboard somewhere and try and figure out how to do that.
I bet it's so cheap now.
But there's laws as to what we like. Here's the thing. We don't want to actually make Times Square. It's gross. We want a place for community to be built, and the people that there are family legacy businesses in Martinsburg, and they're worried about what's happening with the city. They're like, okay. So my pitch is, if we are to come in and set up these businesses, it must be that the existing businesses that are generational family businesses are protected and effectively, where need be, subsidized. And I think that's actually a big draw. So when you come to this place and you're like, I want to go to Cousin T's Diner, next door is a third or fourth generation, tailor shop or something.
Maybe we should start working on a parking deck too. Parking. Because if it will get popular.
Well,
we don't want to hinder
the city
parking
just-
for
I mean,
the businesses.
We got it. We have plans, but again,
Underground parking.
the goal is to make it popular, but not overrun like Times Square. We like it. It still needs to be to a lower degree, but meaningful. So we're going to be doing the planning for this. But imagine a parallel economy, small town Times Square. That's
amazing.
what I'm hoping for.
With a monorail.
Maybe,
That's my
sure.
dream. Just one.
All right, we'll grab some more. Waffle Sensei says, yes, Bobby Biden banged his brother's widow, but in his defense, his dad married the babysitter when their mom died.
She
Is
was the
that-
babysitter?
Joe Biden was?
No, Jill
I've
was a
heard
doctor.
mixed stories about this.
Jill was not a
So have I.
doctor.
She just plays one on media. No, she has her educational doctorate, and I heard this story that he saw Jill Biden's picture while waiting for the train. She had done some small town modeling, and he saw her whatever, and that's how they met. And then other people have said this babysitter thing, but I don't know if that's true. She did. I mean, I think they did get married. They got married at the chapel at the UN in New York, which I think is super weird.
Wow.
Why would you get married there if you're from Delaware?
Yeah, indeed.
It's
But-
your sacred space.
Yeah, I mean, I do think we were talking a little earlier about losing parent versus if your family is divorced, and I think it's always complicated to bring a step parent into any situation, but especially in that scenario when they're so young, and the media will allude occasionally to tension between Jill and Hunter, or Jill and I don't know if she has tension with her daughter Ashley, but it's not an easy thing. Although I will say, I think it is easier when your parents aren't divorced because there is less feeling like you need to be
The
be
loyalty.
ally. Yeah.
I know. Yeah. No, blended families are really tough.
They're very complicated.
Yeah.
Is this something that you get a lot of questions about with your? Because I assume if your kids are growing up in a liberal city, I mean, kids everywhere deal with friends whose parents are divorced.
Yeah.
And things
Well,
like
we
that.
deal with it a lot in our work because we talk about the importance of biology and the parent-child relationship and how complicated it is, and honestly, how there really is no alternative family structure that involves unrelated adults that increases the likelihood a child is going to be safe, loved, thriving. There are fantastic, heroic individual exceptions, but the addition of an unrelated mother or father figure in the child's life will always diminish child outcomes.
Wow.
I saw something about abuse, physical abuse in the home, and how a lot of it correlates with an blood related by blood parent, like step parent.
Stepfather, live-in boyfriend. Statistically, the most dangerous place a child can find themselves is in the home of an unrelated man left to care for the child himself. So likely mother's boyfriend. without a doubt, unquestioning, there is no negotiation about that.
All right, let's grab some more. We got Citizen7 says, Tim, the most egregious lie Joe Biden has ever told, and told repeatedly, was that his son, Beau Biden, was killed in Iraq. The guy's a monster. Yep, he's a piece of garbage. For those that are super chatting, asking about last night's episode, it's available on all podcast platforms. Easiest way to find it, iTunes, Spotify, etc. It is not on YouTube. And for that, blame YouTube. YouTube didn't take it down, but YouTube has their issues, so it is what it is. All right, let's grab some more super chats. What do we got? Terrence Mack says, my mom has Alzheimer's. One of the key features of that is total denial. She refused to acknowledge her decline and insisted she could do everything just as well as in her 30s.
Yeah, it's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard parenting your parents.
I have a friend whose dad was a very serious libertarian, and has Alzheimer's now, and she actually finds that to be challenging because, there's obviously things he doesn't understand, but they'll say things and he'll say, I have rights, I have freedoms, you can't take this away from me. And it's very weird to argue with someone with dementia who apparently is also a libertarian because they're not happy about it. They have rights.
Don't govern me.
I would not say Alzheimer's has a cure according to science, but there are studies where THC will consume and inhibit the formation of the amyloid plaque.
There's a I don't like any of that stuff because there's a million and one things, and there's a bunch of different articles, and everyone's always making claims about.
Check it out, sciencealert.com, THC, Alzheimer's. You'll find lots of connections.
How about just talk to a doctor and don't listen to podcasts?
Because they'll give you pills. I'm telling you other ways, but there are ways.
But this is like, dude, and I read from some hippie website about tree bark has things in it, and then people go to Burning Man. I'm not a fan of that. Anyway, let's read this. We got The Woodsman, 1983 says, the Secret Service most likely wouldn't allow anyone near Joe except medical professionals. If they did and something went wrong, Secret Service would be responsible. What I find entertaining about my hypothetical conspiracy theory is that people are assuming that if the deep state orchestrated a hoax to prop up Gavin Newsom, the Secret Service would be like, oh, gee golly, we're going to have to adhere because we're not part of this plan. Like, I am literally saying, in the conspiratorial world of the intelligence agencies colluding on a hoax to prop up Gavin Newsom, the Secret Service will not stop him from engaging in the hoax they planned themselves. That's why I'm saying I don't think it's likely. I'm just saying it's the perfect scenario for them if they were capable of doing such a thing. All right. Where are we at? Super Chats. Jason Hutchinson says the state is the god of the statists.
Yeah.
So the issue I think that is confusing for people when it comes to the issue of God is that they're using God to refer to beliefs instead of God.
But the problem with God, it doesn't make you good. Just believing in God does not make you good. A lot of people do evil in the name of God because their God was better or they thought it was better or something.
Well, the demons believe in God and shudder.
So so the left may have some kind of social structure that's not God. There is a difference between having a moral framework, believing in God, having a social framework and no moral framework. And so I'll describe it as this. I view the right as a mix between people of a traditional American moral framework, which overlaps with the Christian moral framework. Why? Because they're rooted in the same things. There are people who have drifted away from religion, no longer believe in God, but they still hold the American Judeo-Christian moral framework. People like Bill Maher reference all the time. The left has no moral framework and no God at all. They have social structures. Those social structures, the facts don't matter. All that matters is their social blob of chaos gains power and they adhere to it. That's why that's why Wimmickson becomes the inoffensive word, but then becomes offensive the next day. There's no logic. Logic is immaterial. All that matters is you are in a swarm of wasps and you don't go against the swarm. That's it.
That's because you're made for social connection. And even though this is sort of amorphous and always changing, it does offer you the community that you literally need. It is one of the most important human needs is the need for connection, the need for identity, collective identity. And you're right, that's what church used to offer. Yeah. That is what right-oriented religion offers you as well. But there is a faux religion that the left is offering, and they do give you holy days, and they do give you liturgies, and they do excommunicate, and they do give you a community.
And I agree that like wokeness could be referred to as a non-secular religion, but I think it's better referred to as a cult because there's no moral framework to what it is they believe. If you go to Christianity,
cults have moral frameworks.
There's no holy book or anything like that.
But I'm not saying cults don't. I'm saying religions do, right? So religions have the faith structures and tenets that exist beyond the living for the most part. I think it's fair to say. Christians overwhelmingly there's different versions of the Bible or whatever, but there is Christ. The left, it could change tomorrow. We have no idea. Let me read the super chat. It's a good example. Bacon Nation says, Tim is wrong that there is no centralized structure to the woke. They are morally compelled to support any underdog, Palestine, racial minorities, Ukraine. It explains it all. No, it doesn't. Walmart and Amazon are not minorities, are not underdogs. Joe Biden and the Democrat and deep state are not underdogs. They will adhere to whatever it is the tribe dictates. That's why when Oliver Anthony's song came out and it was a general blue collar lament, they attacked him for it. Why? Because conservatives liked it. That's it. The only thing they have is we hate what the right likes. We love what the right hates. Whereas people on the right will debate and argue about these issues. Seamus Coughlin and I will have a discussion about the limits of abortion, and we will disagree. And we are friends and we get along. The left says, don't know, don't care, I just hate you. That's it. Now you can argue that there are a bunch of liberals that don't think that way. Right, that's called the banality of evil. You know that most of them have no idea that Joe Biden did the quid pro quo. They don't pay attention to the stuff. They made the argument during COVID that the Constitution has limitations and public health is more important than the Constitution. And now you're seeing many of these same people come out and be like, there's no public health exception to the Constitution, because they know that the governor's move in New Mexico was bad politically. If it helps their politics, they agree with it. If it hurts them politically, they disagree with it. There is no central structure to it.
Well, so that's what the other guy said, right? Their God is the state. And something has to be your God.
It's not the state. They don't have a God. They don't
the
go.
Political
they burn
power
down.
That they are
they
seeking,
burn.
Right?
100+ Antifa go and firebomb buildings and trucks, and they occupy a government facility. It is not even the state. There are elements of the state they adhere to. It's just a swarm of wasps that overlap all these different things.
That's right, because Antifa is anarchy, right? That's their God.
No, they're not anarchy.
They don't want any government involvement, don't want any government power. They want
that's not true at all. Antifa are communists. Antifa action comes from the militant wing of the German Communist Party. Anarchists are more like Michael Malice, who are anti-establishment and believe in the individual. When you look at Antifa firebombing government buildings, that is not because they want no government. It's because they want power and control. So the state is not their God, because they will destroy it.
But they're going to create their own state. Right?
Sort of. It's just their cult. It's more like ISIS. The borders don't matter. The belief structure doesn't matter. All that matters is they are a swarm of wasps and you are in it. And if you turn against them in any way or are wrong, you apologize and stay with the swarm and course correct, or you are out. So
that's religion.
So you have all of so first we have intersectional feminism. Then we have critical race theory. Then we have critical gender theory. It just keeps changing whatever it is their focus is randomly. They come out and they say, why is the right so concerned about, child sex change operations? And it's like, because you are pushing it and defending it. They say that, these things don't happen all that often. Listen, if a drag show happens where they let children come in, and this is like sex clownery, I think it's how you like, it's clown makeup and it's sexualized. Yeah, no, the conservatives aren't saying it's the end of the world. It's the apocalypse saying, hey, I don't think you should do that. And then all of a sudden the machine of the left, for no reason, comes out and defends these books like Genderqueer and This Book is Gay. We get people in here like the woman from Majority Report who cannot reject this book. I say, hey, they shouldn't bring books into schools that show pornographic depictions and teach kids how to do these things. And they're like, I think it's a good thing. And I'm like, there's no logic, none whatsoever. It's whatever you are, we are the opposite. It's just like an evil mirror version. They attack the state. They burn down police stations. They attack the White House. Then they defend the state when the state goes after their enemies. It's not for the state. It's not against the state. It is not for corporations or against corporations. They hate a corporation. They hate Big Pharma. They complain about Big Pharma when it comes to the price of medicine. But then all of a sudden the vaccines come out and they're cheering and singing their praises.
Well, not when Donald Trump had them. Only
That's
when
right.
Joe Biden came into power.
Exactly. A really great point. Yeah. Donald Trump says we're going to get the vaccines out, and they all come out and say, no, it's wrong. Yeah. And then all of a sudden one day, like a switch, they all say, actually,
that
yes,
was
it's good.
So weird, man.
Because the Democrat governors came out and said it's going to be mandated, and they all went, oh, are we doing this thing now? We will do thing. It doesn't matter if it's the state. It just matters if it is their core group. But
Exactly.
that's my
I remember
point.
being called Trump juice, and then everyone had Trump juice in their veins like 2 weeks later.
And so I tweeted, "Thank you for letting Trump put his vaccine inside you.
Yeah.
Trump is inside you
Yep,
forever
I
now, and
remember
it will never go away."
I was
but,
I was
but
just
that's ultimately like there is nothing that exists on the left in terms of a cohesive structure. It is just the antithesis of civilization. It is a chaotic and destructive force that consumes and burns like fire.
There's a lot of short order thinking, probably all over the place but with illegal immigration, I noticed it with the immigration because I think people are like, if we bring more people, then we'll have more community. But that's not how communities work. You can't just stick 30 people in the room and expect that we all know each other, get along.
No. There is so much more to culture than that, and community. Also, they're not thinking we'll have more community. They're thinking we'll have more people who will tip the scales in our favor. They'll influence census data, so we potentially could have more control of certain areas, and maybe we'll eventually get more voters, although probably not.
Yeah, I mean, you can look like Sweden. Like they didn't actually have any of the people that were coming into the country integrate into actual Swedish society, and they have these separate societies within Sweden.
Did you see?
I want to read this from Doug Blask. He says, "You've called them a cult numerous times. What do they worship?" Oh, I love this. What does it mean to be woke? Wokeness is defined as as adhering to the liberal social structure. The liberal social structure is amorphous, but that's just about it. And I shouldn't even say liberal. I should say the political and cultural view of what liberal is. You get all these people trying to define woke, and they're like, wokeness is when they, go to schools and do this, and like wokeness is when they make all the characters not white. And I'm like, none of that is true. It changes from all the time. It goes backwards and forwards, but for some reason, it is always just destructive to the structure of the United States. I view wokeness as, very simply, the political, cultural, culture war left, as we would describe it, is fire, and the constitutional republic is on fire. So you're not going to sit there and go, but what does the fire want? It's just burning things down. It is spreading and consuming and starting more fires. But fire is actually about the carbon. No, lots of things can burn, and all that's going to happen is it's going to keep burning. We must put the fire out. We must stop the radical ideology of blind zealotry and restore the constitutional republic.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, there you go. Solved.
Problem solved. Everybody agrees.
Everyone go home now.
But I think the issue is, I've been seeing this since the beginning of the culture war. Everyone's saying that the culture war is one thing or another. My favorite is, I remember a speech given by a prominent conservative. The culture war is nationalism versus globalism. And I'm like, no, it isn't.
No, not even close.
You go talk to half these liberals, they have no idea what you're talking about. That's not even a concept to them. Then I've heard it's authoritarian versus libertarian. And I'm like, no, it's to a large degree, perhaps. But there are certain things the right absolutely agrees must be within the authority of the government, and then there are certain things the left thinks the government should have no authority on. It is just simply the left tends to do things that are part of the left. It is circular logic. It is a group of people. You know what it is? They're ants, right? They create pheromone trails.
Oh yeah.
And you can do a trick where or a phenomenon occurs where if the ants make a circle.
Death march.
Yeah, death march, where all the ants will walk in a circle because the pheromones keep pointing. They don't realize. And then eventually they just run until they die.
They literally.
I view the left as something akin to that. They're all just following each other to nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense because all of the idea, the core ideas, and I'm not saying it's all from Marx. It's just like the core idea of saying everything needs to be deconstructed, everything needs to be postmodern, everything is postmodernism. Everything gets taken apart, you get taken apart. No true Scotsman. It just kind of continues to fall apart. It's like entropy. All
right, everybody, if you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends, and head over to timcast.com to join our Discord community where all this really cool stuff is happening. And we're going to have a members-only uncensored show to talk about some not-so-family-friendly things, and then take calls from you, our members. And after that, the members of the Discord are going to have the after show. So make sure you sign up today. We look forward to seeing you there. You can follow the show at Timcast IRL. You can follow me personally at Timcast. Katy, do you want to shout anything out?
This is great. And you're great. I mean, let me just say, like, I've been listening to some of your culture war issues and your IRLs, and you're a good host.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and you do a good job of like pulling everybody in and keeping things moving when needed. And I thought you handled yourself really well.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, like specifically, you had that culture war one about Gamergate, which I didn't know anything about. And the woman that was on, she didn't even want to talk about Gamergate. She just wanted to like bring up every single thing that you've said. Anyway, I just want to say good job. I think that's you're navigating it well. And I understand. I mean, I didn't know a lot about you before this, but I've got some people in my life that love you and respect you. And I love and respect them.
Well,
so
all right.
you've got some good people following you. So that's what I have to say.
Appreciate it. What's you have a Twitter account?
Oh, yeah.
Tell us about your organization.
Is that what that was supposed to be? Sorry.
No, it was a mandatory compliment.
But thank you for shouting me out.
Totally. No, I really like it. I'm at advo_Katy on Twitter. ThemBeforeUs.com is where you can subscribe to see my children's rights work, which is going to trigger you. So don't go there unless you're ready to like do really hard things on behalf of kids, because that is the mandate, honestly, for every single adult, is to bend and do hard things, because the only alternative is for kids to do hard things for you. And that is a recipe for injustice. And go to wherever books are sold and order Raising Conservative Kids in a Woke City, because the only hope is, I mean, we're already having more kids. My liberal friends have 0 to 2. My conservative kids have 2 to 12 kids. And so if you can not just make the babies, but raise the babies, we are going to be in a very different place in this country in a couple decades.
Let's talk about that in the members only.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. I've loved this conversation. It's been so fun to have you here. I think your work is great. I'm Hannah Claire Brimlow. I'm a writer for Timcast.com. You should go to Timcast.com, click on the read tab to see all the work from me, from Chris Bertman, from Adrian Norman, from all of our journalists. It's so fun to be a part of that team. I'm really grateful for it. If you want to follow me personally, I'm HannahClaire.B on Instagram, and I'm HC Brimlow on Twitter. And yeah, I'm excited for the Members Only show.
Me too. Can't top it. Great stuff. Thank you for bringing the mom energy.
Follow at Timcast News on Twitter and Instagram.
You better follow Timcast News on Instagram
Ian.
and Twitter. You can follow me at Ian Crossland. Let's roll this one out, Serge.
Yes, I'm Serge.com. I'm not going to stay long. Do something to challenge yourself today. That'll be my mission for you guys. Anyways, see you in the later show.
We will see you all over at Timcast in about a minute. Thanks for hanging out.